which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we will now move to the roll call.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Here.
Councilor Koberstein.
Here.
Chateau.
Here.
And Knudsen is absent right now.
Very good. So we'll move now to public comment. Now, under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during consideration of the items. Each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes on the items, each item. So we will start with our new business, item 4.1. This is consideration and award of nonprofit grant application funding in the fiscal year 2020-2021 operations budget in the amount of $151,988, provided 5/27/20, and this is prepared by Mandy Kellogg. Mandy, are you going to present this at this point?
Mayor, it's going to be a shared effort. Good morning, everyone. Our finance director, April Mitz, is going to screen share a PowerPoint, and this presentation has been uploaded to the agenda, so viewers can see that presentation. If they're not interested in watching it on the screen here, we also have a link on our on the city's agenda page. And so we're going to begin today with a discussion of nonprofit grant requests, and then we'll move into some broader topics. And we have a slide that outlines all of the tasks before us today. And I want to preface the conversation today with just a thank you. This is an overview of the workshop objectives. So we're on bullet point number 1 today. We'll work on nonprofit funding requests, and then we'll move into a review of the May 14th budget workshop. We'll discuss the feedback that we received on the long-range financial forecast and talk to you about additional analysis there to make sure that it reflects the council's direction. We will discuss the water and wastewater funds, provide you an update on the general fund, review our current CIP list, and discuss the chamber contract. So I want to begin by thanking the city staff. We have 2 primary staff that work on developing the budget, and this year has been a unique year. Today's our 4th public meeting in 17 days. We're doing a lot, the council workshops this year are a lot more detailed because we're looking for revenue opportunities at the state and federal level. We're researching new creative ideas that the council has identified, and we're making sure that we're really hardening our numbers so that we develop a balanced and responsible budget. So I want to thank the council for their patience. I want to acknowledge that the staff report was posted yesterday, and we endeavor to post earlier before our next meeting. And we'll talk to you about expectations on timing for the next discussion of the budget, which we anticipate to be June 9th. Again, want to thank our staff, not only the finance department, but all of our staff as we work through this pandemic. So we'll move into our nonprofit funding requests. And we have a council working group this is a model that we've used for a couple of years now. The mayor and the vice mayor are a part of that working group. Our staff manages the programs. And at the beginning of this year, we extended the deadline for applications and then had a meeting initially with the 4 of us. And at that time, this was pre-COVID. And I can tell you at that time, we had a different recommendation that was discussed. It was more in alignment with the amount of money invested in the prior year. And as the pandemic began to emerge and we understood the financial implications of that, there were additional conversations about possibly looking at adjustments to the investment here, along with other adjustments that were going to take place throughout the organization and our budget. And so in the spirit of that conversation, the working group discussed a couple of additional criteria by which to evaluate the funding this year. And we added an overlay of essentially health and safety and food security. Meeting the city's goals has always been an expectation of this program. It's fair to say that we've received a lot of feedback. I know that the council has probably received a lot of feedback since we published this yesterday. Our staff has received a lot of feedback. I want to emphasize that this is a starting point for a conversation. While it's set up in a way where the council could approve the request today, they would take effect. We would really take effect after we adopt the budget, which we anticipate to be June 23rd. So if there are any adjustments that are desired today, what I would recommend is we work on those between this meeting and the June 9th meeting, and present a refined list at the June 9th meeting. And I think I see a few adjustments based on some of the feedback that seem reasonable. So at this time, we'll move into the next slide. And this is just I'm sorry, I guess we're going to move to the specific screen share. April, is that right? Okay. So what we're looking at is a refined, this is the adjusted recommendation. And essentially what it did was attempt to achieve a 25% reduction from the anticipated $190,000 investment. So the program application indicated that the city was anticipating funding of approximately $190,000, 140 of that through programmatic grants and $50,000 through the community enrichment grants. And in the prior incarnation of this, when we first met, there were approximately $50,000 of the community enrichment grants that were recommended for funding, and through the different lens, the numbers were adjusted as you see here. So we're happy to walk through the line items for each of these applications. Mandy is our technical expert with respect to the individual applications, and our finance director, April Mitz, and I are available to answer questions. So what we can do is walk through one by one, or open it up for more council, just general discussion first, or targeted discussion. So Mayor, I would ask you the council's preference on how we would like to proceed with walking through each of the grants.
Very good, Mr. Presswich, thank you. And I want to just let everybody know, these are challenging times and difficult decisions. So we want to work through this as a council. I know that folks seeing these initial, the initial layout have questions and concerns, and I just want folks to know that we are in a remarkable time, and it's changed the dynamic to some degree. So with that, I want to begin a council discussion on this. Is there any initial feedback on a way to move forward here from the council? Ms. Koberstein?
Yeah, we have a lot to cover today. I would prefer not to go through line by line, but to talk about the big issues that have come to our attention, or just issues. And then perhaps if there's more time, we can go back, but I think that's a faster way to move.
Any additional council comment or thoughts? Okay, seeing none. I think that's a good way to look at it. Do we want to start? Are there any initial questions on a specific item of the larger items that you have any thoughts on, Ms. Koberstein?
I'm concerned about the lower level of funding for the Boys and Girls Club. They took on a tremendous responsibility previously run by the city without as much success as the Boys and Girls Club. And I don't understand why they are not at the same, what your decision making was, that they were not put kind of at the same level as Rianda and Up Valley, which I see as the other two agencies primarily serving major sectors of the community.
So I'd like to,
So I think,
yeah, Mr. Presswich.
so I think this is an example of one of the line items that I would maybe describe as an oversight from a number standpoint. And I know that there are some ways that we could adjust investments in other parts of our budget to address that $10,000 difference. And so it is is a service that the Boys and Girls Club provides to the city that the city previously provided, and it's very helpful to the city when we have that partnership in place with the Boys and Girls Club.
Mr. Doring, did you have a comment? And then I'll move to Mr. Chateau.
Well, I think Councilmember Koberstein raises a good question, and it was a question. I do believe it was a mistake in our not really focusing in on sort of the prior commitment. When we closed down our teen center, the Boys and Girls Club took that upon themselves, and frankly, I'll own up to that for not catching that nuance and detail. It was not intended. We did have at least an informal sort of an arrangement with the Boys and Girls Club. It really is, in my view, sort of outside the normal nonprofit requests. It's really almost an arm of the city. And so I actually do agree with you, the analysis that you, or the comments you've made. I agree with those, and I think we should probably fund that fully for the reasons stated.
In terms of funding fully, you know, when we looked at, Ms. Chateau, I'll check back with you in just a moment. We made the decision on the community enrichment grants sort of as a blanket decision to move away from those. And I think that's sort of where the oversight issue happened. When we look at the programmatic grants, I believe everything was consistent with the Up Valley Family Center and Rianda House and Boys and Girls Club. It was just the matter of the community enrichment grants that changed the balance. So I think relooking at that is really important. Ms. Chateau?
I was just going to say, I agree. I'm so glad that we're going to be able to add that $10,000 back for that program and that particular grant for doing the teen center. And I was so moved by understanding how big their work was. Not only is it the teen center, but they're also working in mental health and also food security. So that really highlighted how important it is. But I was going to also honor all of your work and how much work you did going through these and how different it is with COVID, and we're all trying to do our best. And so I can see how easy it would be to have some things that come up that weren't how we want it. And I'm grateful that there's this process that we can now adjust it. So thank you for the work you did. It was a tremendous amount of applications that you all went through, and now everything changed in the middle of it. So thank you for that work. And I'm glad that I too want to add back that money.
Thank you. Mr. Doring?
One other nuanced point here that sort of affected my, or maybe clouded my judgment in looking at this. Initially, when we went through this, we saw an opportunity with Mentis partnering with the Boys and Girls Club. And frankly, my analysis didn't go far enough there. I thought that would sort of fill in the gap for the need. When we're talking about health and safety, really primarily, that's something that I brought up. Health and safety really, in my mind, mental health is a big component of that. And so my early thinking was, oh, Mentis is going to be partnering with the Boys and Girls Club and providing some services to those teams. And so that was part of the decision making. And I'm still encouraged by that, but it's still, we need to pay for that director in order to get that program, keep that program stabilized year in and year out. So that's another little nuanced fact.
Thank you. And so, you know, I will mention as we work forward, you know, there are painful cuts. That does not mean we're not committed to the community and working forward to find ways to support what we want to support. So as difficult as these conversations are, they're not the end of our conversations with our community partners. And I just want to put that out there. So thanks. So on this issue, Mr. Prestwich, do we have direction? Do we have some, Ms. Koberstein, do you have another thought?
Well, the way I look at this year's budget is it's difficult, and there's a lot of difficult decisions to be made. But I wish that as we go forward, we could create a list of add back options, things that we would want to come back into the budget if the revenues materialize. And just before we leave this item, in my mind, I would like to try to add back preschool for all. We have a big goal of supporting youth and families. And frankly, we haven't made too many steps forward as a council on our work plan. But one thing we can do, I think, is support these agencies to the extent possible. But overall, as we're taking things out, I'd like to keep in mind, what our preferences are for what we might add back.
Ms. Chateau?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, when I was reading the applications with Boys and Girls Club and Mentis, I have a feeling that we are making progress with our youth plan because we're choosing to invest our dollars in things that are helping the mental health of our youth. And that's what I was feeling strongly when I was reading over these applications, that we might not have a master plan right now, and that's still ongoing work, that there's more work to do. But I felt very good seeing the kind of commitment that we're showing in these hard times to our youth and their mental health, and these amazing services like Boys and Girls Club and partners that we have in the community.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Doring?
Are you wanting to speak, Mayor? You can go ahead. I was just agreeing with the assessment by Councilmember Koberstein. It would be important. This is not the end all. I think it's an evolving budget. I think we should commit to maybe coming back in 3 months and 6 months to see if there's potential for add backs on some of these programs. It's totally reasonable, dependent upon how revenue comes in. I'm okay with that. As a matter of fact, I would recommend that.
Very good. I concur with that. That I think having a roadmap on add backs will let our community know that we are fully engaged sort of in real time as our budget is adjusted. I do concur with Ms. Chateau. We're making progress. It's not always, we don't always get exactly where we want, but we've been working together on these issues and we are making forward steps. So, Mr. Prestwich, do you have any thoughts at the moment on this item, the specific item of Boys and Girls Club, and then I'll open it for public comment on the general item.
Well, Mayor, what I would recommend is we make sure that we address any other questions that the council has. I'm clear on moving the 20 to 30 under the programmatic grant, but the Boys and Girls Club also have a community enrichment grant, and the council may want to speak to that, but also speak to the other items here before, so that you take public comment once on the entire list, because there may be other questions or recommendations that you would like to speak about today.
Very good. So with that, I will open it to public comment. And Amalia, are you?
Wait.
Oh,
I
yeah. Mr.
don't
Doring,
know
see
how
you
the
now.
10,000 has already been put back in. We haven't discussed that yet for the
Community
power hour.
enrichment.
I'm not recommending that. I think the letter from the executive director said they can see that that may not be the best use of funds. I'm focusing on the full 30 on the programmatic and not the, yeah, thank you.
Enrichment.
So this is
Others can
we're
disagree
going-
with me, but that's how I feel right now. So, thank you.
So I think, Mayor, if you could, we could encourage a conversation about all of the line items here before, if the council has any more questions about any of the other items, then once that's finished, move to public comment.
Okay, very good. Are there any other line items here that we're seeing that the council wants to comment on before I open it to public comment?
The only other one that may be of concern, and it's not up on the top part in the enrichment area, but programmatic, is a potential reallocation of funds or reuse of funds for the Cameo Theater. Initially, I didn't think it met the sort of the urgency that we needed, but there may be some alignment and partnership there with putting on some programming with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm wondering if the city manager can speak to that issue. Unless somebody else from the public will speak to that, that's fine. But I can see some room there also to maybe have a conversation.
Chateau, am I seeing your hand? Mute, your mute button.
Thank you. It looks different now with the screen sharing. Sorry about that. I was wondering the same thing about the Cameo, reading over their grant, because it seemed to apply before COVID. So I wondered if there wasn't something else that they would be doing right now, knowing that it's so important to support them on Main Street and having the struggles that they do and having them be so important to our community. So I agree with Council Member Doring. I would like to hear if anything's changed or if there's a way that we could still support them that might be a little bit different with this, the grant that they applied for.
So I can speak to that a little bit. I know that our staff has had some really terrific conversations with a Cameo about the possibility of working together collaboratively on the delivery of a drive-in movie theater concept. And so it's still in talks, but I think this is, and I have not been part of those conversations, but I believe that it's essentially a pivot with respect to this grant program that would be as a result of the COVID environment. So as you know, that's a business that's not allowed to operate physically in its current location the way it used to. And so there's some really creative conversations that are happening about a drive-in concept that they would be a part of. So I think that's, I need to speak with our staff and or the theater to learn a little bit more about the specific funding request. I know the number's at least $5,000. It may be a little bit more, but that's a conversation that I think is a fruitful one and would be very nice for our community as well.
I would support that as well. So moving off of that, if we have all the comment on that, are there any other items that on this line item list that are of interest in discussing at the moment? Let me see if I'm seeing any hands. Okay, I'm not seeing any council hands. So with that, I will open it up to public comment. And Amalia, are you there?
I am. I just want to remind our public how they can participate. If you are calling in via phone, you can press *9 and that will put you in a queue and then you will be notified when it is your turn to speak. If you are using the Zoom app, in the lower left-hand corner, there's a raise hand button and you will press that and be able to speak that way. It looks like we do have some public comment. I'll go ahead and allow that now.
Very good, thank you.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, it's Kathy from the Cameo. Thank you, everybody, for doing a Zoom meeting. I think it's really important. I know you have a very difficult job trying to figure this out, navigate like we all do. I would like to speak to our Pivot grant. I am moving forward with the drive-in movie theater because as I've taken a poll of the community, one of the biggest things they miss is that opportunity. And since we are in phase 3, it does not look like we'll be able to reopen safely and with health standards for the general public in June. It may be mid to end of July. I have looked at locations, and as the whole country is struggling, I have gone ahead and put a screen on hold. The good news is we have our older projector. It's about a $20,000 investment. I would like to shift our grant money to be utilized for this. We can open up as early as this last week in June. Roderick Friedrich has generously given us the lot off of Vidovich Lane and between Trey Posty and Vidovich Lane behind Nimbus. We have a site plan there tonight to see how many cars that we can fit in, and we are going to make this available for everyone. It will be limited, obviously, for cars and safety things, but we're trying to do it 4 nights a week to give the community a way to do something outside the norm. I am really asking for the city's support. I don't see the Cameo being open anytime soon, but I want to try to keep us moving forward and keep the wheels on the bus. Those are my comments. I would love the city grant money to cover this. As you know, the foundation works off of donations. And so I'm just asking for the help. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the comment and the efforts. So thank you for speaking today. Are there any other public comments at the moment?
Yes, we do have additional public comment.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. This is Jenny Ocone with the Up Valley Family Centers. I want to thank you for your past support of the Up Valley Family Centers work and for your consideration of our current proposal. Under the conditions of COVID-19, we've seen significant increased demand for services by local households struggling to meet their basic needs, in particular those households who are not eligible for any government relief. Over the past months, our staff has continued to operate remotely. We've been providing emergency financial assistance, connection to health and mental health resources, and we've continued working with local nonprofits and schools in the city and county to address gaps, reaching hundreds of our local St. Helena households. We appreciate your partnership and will continue to do everything that we can to support those who are most vulnerable in our city, not only through the city's funds, but by leveraging other private dollars so that we can maximize our impact at this very challenging time. And so I thank you for your consideration of our request and understanding of the current situation.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing with the Up Valley Family Centers for the community through this. Do we have additional comments at this point?
We do, and I'll go ahead and allow them to speak now. Ms. Spencer, go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Amalia. This is Julie Spencer with Rianda House Senior Activity Center. And like Jenny, I just wanted to echo the great appreciation for the council to consider renewing the support that is so greatly needed and much appreciated to Rianda House this year. We are providing, we continue to work Monday through Friday remotely to keep people informed and connected. We are working closely with the Up Valley Family Center and are very active with COAD and ensuring that everybody's well fed and information is provided to the individuals within the city, in addition, of course, to working closely with the city. So it's just our honor, and we tremendously appreciate the support. Also wanted to acknowledge how difficult a challenge for those reviewing the grants are, and just applaud you for your process in doing this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just so folks know, the city, these budget processes, are looking for making sure that we can be as supportive as we can through a situation like this COVID situation. Once we understand the needs, we are also motivated to make sure the support is there, and that's part of this budget process. Are there any other public comments at this point?
Yes, there are.
Very good.
Mr. Weiss, go ahead.
Yeah, hello, good morning, everybody on the council. This is Rob Weiss, Executive Director at Mentis. I just want to follow up on the comments of my colleagues, Jenny Ocone and Julie Spencer, and also just thank you for your support of our mental health work in St. Helena in partnership going forward with the Boys and Girls Club and really the larger community to attend to the needs of teen mental health. As we all know, it's an incredibly important issue, and it's only highlighted by the COVID-19 situation and the difficult and uncertainty around returning to school and the stress and the anxiety that's creating for families and teens alike. So we again want to thank you, and we're very appreciative of the opportunity to work in St. Helena and support teen mental health in collaboration with our partners up there and yourselves, and including the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amalia, is there additional public comment at this point? And I do want to recognize that also, you know, the mental health challenges that have been exacerbated by the COVID situation. We are very motivated to making sure our community has support in that area. That's a big part of what we are focusing on.
At this time,
Amalia,
we do not see any additional public comment.
very good. Thank you. So I'm going to bring it back to the council now. Do we have any additional thoughts on these issues from our council members? Mr. Doring, Vice Chair Doring.
I would just like to reiterate one more time that this is an evolving process and that we need to continue to look at it. And for those who have not been funded at this stage, stay tuned. There may be more opportunities as we go in through the year. I think people have a sort of misunderstanding of what the budget tool is. It evolves, it's updated, it changes a little bit. It's a path forward, but who knows, we may get more revenues. I'm not as optimistic as some in the community. The other thing I would offer this is we have a tremendous amount of wealth in this community. And a couple years ago, we had to make similar difficult cuts, and somebody stepped forward. Mr. Leslie Rudd stepped forward and funded a lot of these programs. And so it's a call out for those who have been blessed with tremendous wealth in our community to help us now. In particular, I have a shout out for two programs that are so beautiful and essential to our community, and that's the Cameo. Let's not wait till we lose it and then look back and go, oh, we should have done more for the Cameo Theater. Cameo theaters do not exist like this in the world anymore, very few. It's an opportunity that we should never lose. And so we need to, those who are able to write big checks should write them to these kinds of things if they love what Kathy Buck and her board are doing. I also say the same thing for Nimbus Arts, all of them, frankly, but those are two of my favorites in the community. We don't want to lose them. So government has a role in helping these nonprofits, but private folks also have a role to help our community. So I would encourage folks who have the ability to really look at these budgets, and if they can help, let them, hopefully the spirit will move them to help all of these different causes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And with that, I want to remind the community, let's stay involved and communicating with each other. This is an evolving situation. And so we want folks to keep heart and keep a positive outlook as we move forward and look for as many opportunities as we can. So Ms. Koberstein, and then I'll go.
If Kathy Buck is still listening, I'm looking for some clarification. I understand the willingness to swap out the original Let's Eat money, which was $10,000. I thought I heard her mention that this outdoor movie, drive-in movie thing was a $20,000 item. I just want clarification whether her request is still just $10,000 from the city, and that we're assuming the rest comes from other sources.
Is Kathy still on the line, Amalia?
That's why I made my pitch.
I am on the line. Hi there, everybody. Thank you for that question. I don't know where the money's going to come from, quite honestly, but I know that I have to look at, again, our community, our mental health, what I can do to offer some relief. And I've gone out on a limb on faith, have no idea how to fund it completely. And I agree. Thank you, Paul, for reaching out for the community as well. But in this environment, I'm asking the city to do as much as they can to help. That we can have this up and running, And we can keep it going through the end of the year. We can work with nonprofits to help them bring back maybe a fundraising opportunity for them in going forward with this. But that money has to come from somewhere. And as many of you know, I just go, okay, I got to believe. And so I know we've canceled, or I've heard that we're canceling our fireworks. I know Calistoga and Yountville. I'm asking for the city and the council to help me in however much you can, because I think that this opportunity is going to give back tenfold.
Thank you, Ms. Buck. Ms. Mitz, do you have a comment?
I do. Just an overall comment for all the nonprofits. So currently there are several nonprofits in this current fiscal year that have been granted money already that have not used it. And I believe the Cameo is one in the current fiscal year that has not used the $10,000. So that is something that then this goes for any nonprofit who has not expended their funds. What they can do is they can make a request through Mandy Kellogg, and it can be administratively approved by the city manager, where they can actually shift the focus of their current nonprofit grant to another focus, and then we can still allocate the money in this current fiscal year. So for the instance of the Cameo, they have $10,000 that they haven't used. It did indicate that the program that they want to do the drive-in theater this current fiscal year, so it would start before July 1. So that's an easy request that can be made by the Cameo to our staff. We can shift the focus of their last year's allocation for the nonprofit grant and be able to give them a $10,000 jump start for implementing the program right now. So I just want to make that overall comment that would apply it to any of the nonprofit grant foundations.
Okay, and then I think I see first Ms. Koberstein, then Ms. Chateau.
April actually addressed my question, so I have nothing else.
Very good. Ms. Chateau?
I'm in support of doing that. That's a great way to get to the 20,000. If they can use the 10,000 from this year and then give them another 10,000, and we could have that drive-in movie theater up and running. And I just got really excited hearing that idea about the 4th of July. I would love it if we could explore that as a possible way to still see fireworks on the screen.
Thank you. My thoughts on this proposal are it's remarkable in that I believe you said it could be something that would work up to 4 nights a week. This could be a place for our community over the coming months as we come back together as a community gathering ritual space. I think there's a great value in this. So I am supportive of this as well, and finding the funding to move this forward as quickly as possible. Mr. Presswich, do you have any thoughts at this moment?
My question was answered also, so I was looking for clarity on the amounts related to the Cameo. And so I think we have the feedback we need. I appreciate that. Okay, and so the city and the Cameo are in close conversation. Just as we step away from this item, just making sure that we keep that conversation going to get things implemented. Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving forward from there, this is we've taken public comment on the other items. Is there anything else that needs to be added at this point, Mr. Presswich, on this item? No, I think we have the feedback we need on the first item. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So with that, I'm going to move on now.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I believe Ms. Buck has one more comment.
Yes, please. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just need to be very clear about the grant that we were awarded and have not used. And it was slated to be Arts in April. We were doing workshops with the Disney Museum and also with Nimbus. We pivoted that, and we will be putting in our grant request money. In April, we did an online streaming program where we have, and it's still ongoing, have continued to bring quality stories, Fantastic Fungi, which was canceled because of COVID. And then we just recently did a Zoomfari live, free to all families, that took us on a tour of the giraffes in over in Sonoma. So We've offered the things from the New York Children's Museum, and our streaming channel has taken an extraordinary amount of hours in programming. And so that will be what we propose for our funding from our, what we called our Arts in April, because we did start our streaming program in April. So I just want to clarify that that money is being proposed for what we've created online for people to be interactive with. They've been able to meet directors and everything else. And in addition, trying to keep ahead of the curve and give something back to the community is the drive-in theater. So I just want to be clear on that, please.
Okay, thank you for the, Ms. Koberstein.
Well, based on that, I would recommend that we fund the theater to the $20,000 level. It is a big community event like the fireworks. We're almost up to the day where we have to make the decision if we're going to cancel the fireworks contract, which is a $40,000 item. But I think that this is a good replacement for it.
I do too, and I see it as this ongoing addition to our community. So I think there's a great value there. How does the rest of the council feel in terms of finding the funding in that area? Mr. Prestwich, did you have a thought?
I'm happy to comment on it, but I was going to wait for council members.
Okay, I believe we're going to be discussing the fireworks in a little bit. So keeping our eyes open for when that comes up, perhaps that is where funding can come from.
I do think it's helpful for us to make sure that we complete this conversation with clarity. So I think what we have is Councilmember Koberstein has recommended an additional $10,000. I think the mechanism for that might be that we essentially reallocate, instead, if hypothetically, and we think all of our neighbors are essentially canceling fireworks, we take the current year investment in the fireworks, the $40,000, and fund a portion of that $20,000 request with that, and then so 10,000, let's say, of that 40, and then another 10,000 through this grant program that would take effect after July 1. And it's my understanding that the Cameo's interest is programming beyond July 1 and through the summer. So I think that would be the mechanism I would recommend.
Very
I'm
good.
seeing some nods.
Yeah, and is it appropriate right now to have the fireworks discussion, just so we settle that? I believe being consistent with the rest of the county, that is the direction we're going. Do we want to wait till later in the meeting, or is now the time?
We should probably talk about it on the next one, but I think so long as we're heading that direction, that's the formal place for that decision. But I think I have the clarity that we need, and our direction is to use $10,000 from this year, likely to be the fireworks account, and then $10,000 of programming in next year's grant program for the Cameo, specifically for a total of $20,000.
Okay, I see Ms. Chateau's hand.
I just had a question for Kathy Buck, if I could ask her, because I didn't hear her say, is that something that you can consider doing a 4th of July celebration for the community if we fund the screen?
Am I on?
Yes.
It's more than that. I'm so excited you asked that question. Yes, the 4th of July falls over a weekend. So my goal right now is to have movies showing Thursday night through Sunday night. Through the end of July, there are no events or weddings happening over at Trey Posty. And Rodney has generously agreed that as we go on, we'll work around his schedule. But my goal is to do a minimum of 3 programs every week. So I love the idea of doing something extra special for the 4th of July. We can also use this during Harvest Festival. We can use this for Day of the Dead. I'm so excited about the possibilities, and I think you're going to be really amazed. And we're going to invite people to get their dinners, their takeout dinners for their cars right from our local restaurants. So it really ties the whole community together. And I just want to, so that's all I have to say. So
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Sounds good.
Ms. Koberstein, did you have a comment?
No, I agree with Mark's way of where the money's coming from.
Okay, very good. So I believe the city manager has the direction. With no further comment, I think we're ready to move forward and into our next item. Thank you, everybody, for the focus on this. So now we're going to move to our next item, and this is 4.2 of the budget workshop review of fiscal year 2020-21 I'm sorry, I'm on the Mr. Presswich, I'm on item 4.2. This is, okay, nonprofit funding
Correct.
requests and recommendations, separate staff report, review of water and wastewater funds budget data, review of refined general fund forecasting data, and review of fiscal year 2020-21 Chamber of Commerce agreement. And so I'll pass this off to Mr. Presswich at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take the first two slides and then we're going to transition to the finance department, which will walk us through the water and wastewater funds and some long-range financial forecasting feedback. So this slide shows the budget priorities that the council discussed and essentially adopted as to help us guide the decision-making. This was discussed on the May 14th workshop. So just in summary, the established budget priorities include supporting the city's 3-year goals and work plan tasks, ensuring delivery of key capital improvement projects, protecting service levels to the extent feasible, investing in business recovery efforts, and utilizing general fund reserves to stabilize services and retain employees. And as a reminder, this is the balanced budget framework that we discussed on the 14th that continues to guide the decision-making and the development of the budget. So with respect to budget reductions, the feedback that we've received from the council and frankly the community on May 14th, there were a number of comments related to the PERS amortization. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to let you know that we had presented approximately $2.6 million in potential cuts, and we are able to still maintain our $2.32 million target by retaining a 15-year amortization on the pension liability. So that, unless directed otherwise, our plan is to maintain the 15-year accelerated payment schedule, and we will still meet this target. The target for use of general fund reserves is 30%. That's programmed at $1.74 million at the moment. That's a little bit less than 1/3 of our projected general fund reserves at the end of the fiscal year. With respect to labor strategies, we currently have $609,000 of solutions. There may be a few more, and we'll be talking more about that down the road. And with respect to new revenue, 5% of the budget framework, and we'll talk about a couple of options for the council today. And now I'll turn it over to April to walk us through some long-range financial forecasting data.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So based on the feedback for the long-range financial forecasting, the bullet points below, there's 5 new bullet points, and these are the new assumptions that we are going to be modeling the long-range financial forecast with, and this will be presented to City Council on the June 23rd meeting. And I just want to make sure that I've captured everything correctly based on listening to the videos, and I just want to make sure that I have everything correct before I start running the scenarios. So the first assumption was with the sale of city-owned assets to show this as a separately identified revenue line that's added to the general fund balance as opposed to being put right into the CIP funds. So that will be a separate line item. The second assumption is to show a model with line items where incremental increases can be seen. So such as property tax, sales tax, TOT, so as new hotels potentially go online. Right now, all that information is on the back end, but instead shifting it to the front end, so incrementally, you can see the differences. We're going to be showing modeling without debt service, so this should give the City Council and the public an ability to see what the debt capacity is and how much additional debt can be taken on. And then showing separate line item for storm drain repairs. There was an interest because of some of the recent talks that have been happening to see if storm water can be treated similar to a utility fund, such as the water wastewater side. So I have reached out to our city attorney, and I've been talking to her about the different models that can be used. So there is getting some traction now where the stormwater system could be set up as either a separate utility account, so it would be done as part of utility billing, and or if you could differentiate what the difference, how much can be allocated from storm drain into water and wastewater. So there's still some legal issues with that, so I'm working with the city attorney. But in any circumstance, we'll show those as a separate line item for the storm drain repairs in the long range financial forecasting, knowing that if it can be done similar to utility rates, that line item can be pulled out. And then the last item is modeling 2 hotels. So the first hotel is Farmstead, because that is the furthest along in the development process right now. And then the other hotel being modeled would be the highest producing hotel based on the Infrastructure Task Force report. So based on that information, I would love any feedback to see if I got those, if I've captured those correctly, and if there's anything that I'm missing. So I'd open that back up to City Council.
I'll just say, I think it's fine. It allows us to actually see more clearly where the impact of changes that we make, in our decision making. So thank you for separating things out.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other feedback, so I will move on to the next slide.
I'm sorry, April, I was on mute
Yeah.
there. Can you hear? I'm sorry.
Oh.
I appreciate this, and I just want to make sure that as we're looking at additional development, we're also considering our climate goals as we look forward to the upcoming years that these things align. So as we discuss our long range financial forecast, we're also looking at our long range climate goals. So I just want to make sure that we're aligning those as we go. So that's my comment.
Great, thank you. So no other comments. I will move on to the next slide. So I want to provide a brief overview of our current year for water and wastewater, because now that we did our second bi-monthly billing, we do have some updated numbers for council. So I thought it would be important to provide those numbers and just give an overall sense of how these funds are doing. So currently for water and wastewater, the revenues are showing on track. So the total amount of revenues that have been billed for the water fund through April 2020 is at 80%. And the wastewater is at 81%, and then wastewater is at 80%. So we are showing that we are on track for our revenues. However, a caveat just to keep in mind is that the short-term and the long-term impacts of COVID-19 are still not completely known. For the utility accounts, we operate on an accrued basis of accounting, which means that revenues are recognized as soon as they are earned. So the second that we send those bills out to all of our utility customers, we're showing that as revenue in our system, regardless of when that money comes in. So when we look at the revenues that we show as collected or received for those two accounts, it does not take into consideration any accounts that may not pay their bills. Currently, right now, under the COVID-19 pandemic, and during our emergency declaration, we are not shutting off any utility services, which is falling in line with what other cities, counties, districts, utility agencies are doing right now. And prior to COVID-19, the only mechanism that the city has to actually collect past due amounts is by shutting off the water. Once, in order to get the water turned back on, you have to pay your bill in full. And so that is something that is our only mechanism right now, and that mechanism has been taken away because of COVID-19 emergency declarations. And in addition to the long-term ramifications of Senate Bill 998, which we have just implemented, which makes turning off utilities a little harder. It can still be done, but there's definitely more steps that the city has to take to ensure that they are not low-income families that we are turning off the water spigot for. So I wanted to make everyone aware that there might be some ramifications to these revenues. As far as the expenses go, the water, wastewater, even though the revenues are on track, we did take the same necessary precautions as we did for the general fund as soon as we knew the shelter at home orders were being put into place. And what we did is we did eliminate all unnecessary spending, including the elimination of travel and non-essential training. So we are still trying to live within our means within both of those funds, even though the revenues are showing on track. The next slide I want to review, this gives a little more detail as far as not being able to shut off water and the people's ability to pay their bills. So this is the aging report that we have. So I ran the report on May 25th as well as on April 30th and comparing it to the monthly average. So you can see on the far right-hand side where you see the total amount of unpaid bills over 30 days. So you can see based on about a 2-year monthly average, anything over 30 days, we typically show an uncollected amount of about $115,000. On 4/30, you can see that jumped to $260,000. And then on 5/25, it lowered slightly to $222,000 that's over 30 days past due. As of right now, we cannot completely say that it's a result of COVID-19. We did see a big bump up as soon as we went over into the bi-monthly billing cycles. And so showing this aging report, we can't unequivocally say it was due to COVID-19. It could be a combination of COVID-19 and also jumping to the bi-monthly billing cycle. So this is something that me and my staff are actively looking at, but just wanted to make you aware of some of the risks to our revenue forecast for the water wastewater side. Ultimately, what would happen is if it happens to be an account we cannot shut the water off, when that person would ever move out of that particular facility, those funds would ultimately go to collection, which might have to ultimately be something that's written off. So just want to make City Council aware of that. The next slide, I'm going to start moving into the fiscal year 21 projected revenues and draft expenses. So this is the water side. We're showing that our projected revenues is $6.8 million, which is higher than our current year, and that's based on the natural increase in water rates that's going to be happening in November. Our draft expenses is $6 million. Overall, our reduction in expenses from the previous fiscal year is $680,000, almost $681,000. Following the same formatting that we did for the general fund is we do have draft budget reductions. And so here's a list. So although this shows more draft budget reductions, we also know that there were increases in some of the line items as well. But overall, the draft reductions that we had was the transfer to capital projects of $455,000. There is a note on here, and there's the same note in the wastewater side, is what we do is once we formulate the proposed budget, any additional net revenues, we put in the budget that they are transferred over into the water and wastewater CIP project fund. So that way it can help cash fund some of the larger CIP projects we have. So there is a big caveat in here, even though we show that has been taken out as a line item, it will actually be put back in for the proposed budget. Salary and benefits, there's an overall savings of about $319,000, and that's due to current staff vacancies. Services, including training and travel suspensions for non-essentials, is $44,000. Supplies is $14,000, and then debt is about $10,000, and that is primarily due to us refunding one of our bonds that was eligible. So we did realize savings over the next couple of fiscal years. So the total is $932,000. For what the draft water net position is looking like, so our estimated ending balance for the end of this fiscal year is about $3.5 million. Estimated revenues, again, is $6.8 million. Estimated expenses is $6 million. And estimated net position is $4.2 million, which gives us a 70% net position. And again, this is before we transfer out any funds to go over to the water CIP to support those projects. For the wastewater side, our projected revenues is almost $3.4 million. Draft expenses is $2.7 million. So our overall reduction in expenses from the current fiscal year is $876,000. The draft budget reductions, transfer and capital projects, $604,000. And again, this will be shifted once we finalize the numbers, and then you will see this line item added back in the budget. Capital was $187,000, and that had to do with some one-time expenditures from the wastewater side in the current fiscal year. Services, including training and travel, is $90,000. Supplies is $50,000. Maintenance is $17,000. The big chunk of the maintenance has to do with grants that we received for generators. In the past, what we would do is we'd have to rent generators, and now that we received grants, we will no longer have to rent them because we'll actually own those generators. And debt, there is a decrease of $4,400 from the previous fiscal year. So you see the total overall reductions is $953,000. Again, it was offset by some increases in some of the expenditures. So our wastewater net position, our estimated ending balance is $2.5 million, and there's an asterisk, which I will get to when we get to the net position. Our estimated revenues is $3.3 million. Estimated expenses is $2.7. So then that leaves our estimated net position at $3.1 million, which is 113%. Just as a side note, this $3.1 million does include the $1.15 million settlement that is yet to be transferred to the CIP fund. Once this has been transferred over, the estimated net position is at 72%. And then also this balance does not include any transfers to the CIP fund from the net income of this current fiscal year. So quick overview of where we're at with the water and wastewater funds, and I'll be happy to answer any questions any council members may have.
All right, am I seeing any questions from the council at this point? Mr. Doring?
Do we actually physically possess the generators?
Erica Smithies is saying we do not physically have them yet.
What's the timeline on that? I mean, we may not have to rent them, but we may have to rent them, right? So what's the timeline?
Mute, Ms. Smithies.
It'll be at least 12 to 14 weeks once we procure equipment, but we don't even have an RFP out for generators yet. So it might be too preliminary to cut that out of the budget just right now.
That's why I asked the question.
Ms. Mitz,
Thank you.
can we see that? Ms. Mitz, what was that that cost again in the budget on the generators? If we can go back to that slide.
It was, I believe it was approximately $15,000. The maintenance does include a couple other items in there. So that's easily something that we can add back in the budget.
Okay. Is that an item, this is a little off track, but that can be expedited, knowing that those generators are critical infrastructure?
If I may, we actually have generators at the Cronulla pump station and the wastewater treatment plant. So I'm just a little confused by why there's generators mentioned on this. The water fund, yes, we'd have generators that we need to fund during PSPS and or during the, any power shutoffs. So I wonder if there's a little confusion there.
Okay. So we have coverage with generators now, just not these new generators. That's what we're saying. Okay, very good.
We've had to rent generators. A good example is when we rented a generator to assist with stormwater and I believe sewer also at the Vineyard Valley Mobile Home Park last year. So that's just an example of an additional generator. The grants that we've received will help us replace existing generators that we have at water and wastewater. We probably have to choose one over the other, but there's also a roving generator that is needed. And given the fund balance on both the water and the wastewater funds, these are expenses we can absorb during the year and adjust if necessary, the budget.
Okay, very good. Are there any other?
Well, wait a minute.
Oh, Mr. Doring?
First of all, I can't see anybody, so I'm just talking to, yeah, here we go. I think staff needs a huddle on this issue. This is not something that can be just taken lightly and passed over. Get together, figure out the need on the water treatment plant, with respect to replacing that generator. We had some serious issues with that last year, and I don't want to repeat that. So we need to have staff huddle on that issue, finance, public works, city manager, and get a straight answer to the city council. We cannot have this kind of confusion going forward. It's too important of an issue.
Thank you. Ms. Chateau?
I had some questions about the bills that weren't, the increase in the amount of people that weren't paying them, April. What's the process now? Do they get a phone call, a friendly reminder? Is there a way to connect them to some services to help them if now people's financial situation has changed that would help us get that revenue back?
Yeah, currently we do have, we have a hardship agreement that's available to, oh, I'm sorry, it looks like there's a little delay. We do currently have a hardship agreement that is available that we do offer to anybody who has any financial hardship. So what they can do is any balance due, they can break out into additional monthly payments. And because of COVID-19, we definitely want to be sensitive to those who may not be able to afford to pay their bills right now. In a typical process, we would do door hangers. That is something that we're not doing right now. We've actually just drafted a letter that we'll be sending out to those who are past due. And the title of it is just, it's a friendly reminder of your balance due. And then it does offer different options for the individuals who are past due. And it's referring them to call our staff and also giving them copies of the hardship agreement so they do know there are things available.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional council comment at this point? So with that, we'll, and then, looking forward to getting some clarity on the generator issue. So with that, then we'll move forward, Ms. Mitz, with the presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so we wanted to provide a quick update on the general fund. We did receive on Tuesday our sales tax updates for the March payment that we just received. So on the far left-hand side, you'll see that sales tax for March, we have it broken down into two different areas. So it's the retail sales and use tax, and then it's Measure D. So our adopted budget, we projected initially in March we'd receive $287,000. Measure D, we projected it was about $102,000 for a total of $388,000, almost $399,000. For the revision after the shelter-at-home orders went into place, we did decrease the regular sales and use tax to $179,000, Measure D to $63,000 for a total of $243,000. No, oops, I'm sorry. So the overall reduction that we looked at was a 38% reduction off of what we initially projected for March. The actuals that we received, so for sales and use tax, that actually went down. So instead of $179,000, we actually only received $148,000. Measure D was a little higher. So instead of $63,000, we actually received $72,000. And for a total that we've actually received through March is $221,000. So it is 8% lower than what we initially estimated after we did the revisions for COVID-19. So we wanted to make council aware of this. Definitely fluid as far as cash flow goes. And so we will receive our April numbers towards the end of June. So we'll definitely keep everybody posted on that. The next slide is some latest developments on potential risks to the general fund. Just wanted to let council know, as well as make the public aware, that there are very fluid items that are happening right now that could affect our next year's budget and our revenues. The first is the vehicle license fee funds. As you have seen last Friday, Supervisor Dillon did send to our local representatives information on how the governor's May revise that came out on May 14th could potentially negatively impact our revenues for next year. What this equates is right now we have $750,000 in our budget for next year for the VLF fee. The VLF fees that the city receives are a constitutional guarantee for us. However, because of nuances in the governor's May revise, there is a potential that the $750,000 could be deferred payments to the city, which we would not realize for 1 to 2 years. So that is a very fluid item. We are currently, you know, along with the county and special districts and the other cities in our area, currently lobbying our local representatives as well as the governor's office. So hopefully we will not see this happen, but it is a risk. So we did want to make everybody aware of it. The next item is PERS net pension liability. There is a potential change to the discount rate. We will not know what that is until after the close of this current fiscal year, so after June 30th, and it will be dependent on what the PERS actual rate of return is. So for instance, in the staff report as well as in the CAFR, it does show what a 1% swing would be if the discount rate is changed. So currently our unfunded liabilities hovers right around $11 million. If there is a discount rate change of 1%, the unfunded liabilities could increase potentially up to $17 million. The chances of the PERS discount rate actually changing 1 full percent in 1 year probably will not happen. It's probably not likely. If there was a change, it might be realized over a 4-year period, but we just wanted to make the public and council aware that that is very fluid, and we will not know that information until probably late summer at best on what the change in discount rate could mean for the city. What will happen is it will not affect our next year's PERS payments, but we will start realizing that in fiscal year 23. And for order of magnitude, if there is a 1% discounted rate, it would add approximately $500,000 to our unfunded liability payment per year starting in 2023. So it is pretty significant. Again, we don't expect, highly unlikely that a whole 1% would happen the next year, but just wanted to make you aware of how volatile the PERS net pension liability is based on what their final returns are going to show after June 30th. The last item that just a general risk to the general fund is if we do have a second wave of COVID-19, there's many reports swinging one way or another on this, saying it's not going to happen or it could happen. We want to be fully prepared and also be prudent in how we develop the budget. If a second wave did happen and it occurred next April, May, and June, it would be an additional approximate $1.3 million loss to our general fund revenues for next fiscal year that we haven't accounted for. So just some items to keep the council aware that they're things that we're monitoring. And as new risks come up, we definitely will make you aware of what comes about. So the next item I'm going, are there any questions on any of the risks that we've presented that we've identified here?
Any council comments at the moment on these items? Let me see if I'm seeing everybody on the screen here. Ms. Koberstein, did you have a comment? No, okay. Thank you, okay, and this vehicle license fee did come up very recently. All the cities are facing this and looking at strategies, so it's appreciated how we're gonna look at how to absorb something like this. So fairly new to the conversation. Anyway, with that, Ms. Mitz, please proceed.
Great, thank you. Yes, fairly new. That was last Friday, late afternoon is when we were made aware of that. So a lot of time spent over the weekend just trying to understand what the implications are. So the next section, I'm going to do a quick overview of our CIP list. So this was the list that was brought to the Planning Commission this past Tuesday night for their approval for the conformity to the general plan. There are a few other items on this list that weren't on the list that went to Planning Commission, and the only reason being is the list that went to Planning Commission were projects that would be worked on in fiscal year 21. The full CIP list includes projects that don't have a start date until fiscal year 22 and beyond. So the current list that we have right now is just giving you what the project is, what the status of it, if we've deferred any projects, as well as the estimated completion. I am not going to go line item by line item on this, but I do welcome any questions from City Council on any particular items. And our Public Works Director, Erica, is also online to answer any questions regarding these projects. The full list of CIPs with the budgets included will come to City Council at the next City Council meeting. For the most part, the budgets that were adopted last year have not changed. There might be some updates. I think the largest updates will be with the downtown restroom project. So I just wanted to make you aware of why we don't have the facts and figures in here. This is just showing you the current list and what is in progress and being deferred. And I have to say, after reviewing the list again with our Public Works Director, we have a lot of things going on right now. So I commend her and her staff for all that they're doing. So the first list is our civic improvements. So you'll see we have quite a few that are in progress right now. The Crane Park lighting improvements and Crane Park, in the library roof, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong line item. The library roof repair, the flat section has been completed on that. We are looking to defer the pitched roof section until a later date, knowing more of what is going to, it will or will not happen with the City Hall and library building as part of the other project that's going on. And so right now the pitched roof section is being deferred. Repainting the fire station is also being deferred until 2022. So the rest of the items are in progress, where we do expect completion in fiscal year 21, with the exception of the ADA transition plan, which is ongoing because it is a 15-year plan. The next list is a review of our street CIP projects. So as with the other projects, we do have quite a bit in progress. The only ones that have been deferred at this point is the Sulfur Creek erosion repair. Right now we are in the design and permitting, but the construction portion of it is being deferred until 2022. There are some other items that are in progress, and a lot of them are design only, so we will be getting to construction at later dates. For the water side, we do have also a lot of in progress on these projects as well. There are a few that we're sticking to the original schedule, so we actually have not deferred any of these current projects on this page. On the second page, you do see some other in progress. There are two that are deferred. One is the wastewater treatment plant condition assessment, and our Public Works Director can speak more on this particular project, as well as the spill containment at Bell Creek. So both of those have been deferred, and it is unknown when the spill containment at Bell Creek will start back up again. And then the spill containment at Stonebridge Wells is deferred as well as the remove restriction at Rutherford Pump Station. The final list of the water CIP projects is, everything is in progress on this or according to the new schedule. There is one new line item on here, and this is the Kearney and Andrea water main replacement. So we're looking at doing design in fiscal year 21 and then construction in fiscal year 22. And so this is a new project that we did want to make council aware of. For the wastewater side, you'll see the wastewater treatment upgrades phase 1. I have not heard an update on the bids. I know we received bids and I believe they're still under review. I don't know if Erica, if you have a nod to that one.
I missed which project are you talking about? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades.
So we have the CEQA consultants for making that selection. So that's still in the design phase, and we'll hopefully bring that to council on June 23rd.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then you'll see the next section of wastewater projects, the field improvements, the pond levee, the facilities automation, the install, the replacement well, and the sludge removal. All of those, we are still showing those as active projects. However, they are actually wrapped up into the wastewater treatment plant phase 1 upgrades. So just want to make a notation of that when we finally get the price tag for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, all of these other projects are actually going to be rolled up into it. We have replacement of the sewer mains annually, that's in progress. Cornella Pump Station, right now we're pending the final design. And then this is a project that could potentially have to be deferred based on what the revenues were. In an early conversation with City Council, I believe it was back in January or February, there was some indication of potentially using general fund monies to get this project completed. That was pre-COVID-19, and so now we're in a different financial situation. So that is something that once we know what the design is and the costs are, we will look at what resources could potentially be allocated towards completing that project. And then we have our update of our GIS maps and sewer system, as well as our sewer plan, which is currently in progress. And that is it's a very brief overview. I'm happy to go back to any of those slides to answer any questions, but we wanted to make council aware of the projects that are currently happening, where we're at in progress on them, and then we will be bringing the full budgets to the City Council at the June 9th meeting.
Thank you. Are there any initial questions on the lists we just saw? Mr. Doring, Vice Mayor Doring?
Thank you. Just a general comment from the city manager to help me understand the reason for deferral. I could guess. Is the reason purely economic, or is it a capacity issue, or a combination of both? And will we get to a point when we look at some of these CIP issues, whether there's a health and safety issue that we as a council would have to say, oh, this needs to maybe more important than others? I'm concerned about all those projects actually, but the Rutherford pump station, it seems like, I don't know if is that a money issue? We don't have the money, or we don't have the capacity, or both, I guess. That's just one example, and maybe a broader overview from you would be helpful.
Okay. Well, I think I'll partner with Erica on some of this, because I think it depends on the individual project. But it's important from an overall perspective to acknowledge that we have one licensed engineer in the city, and that's Erica, and she does a tremendous amount of work. And we have a second engineer who doesn't have his PE yet, but will relatively soon. So we do have two engineering type minds that work on projects, and we're supplemented by consultants in with various projects. So as the comprehensive list indicates, it's an extraordinary amount of work. In some cases, it's a matter of costs. So for example, deferring the painting of the fire station out a year, I mean, that's an example of cost. And I think there probably are a few others that are delayed because of timing issues with how long it takes to review with our partners on permitting. And then I think it's fair to say there probably are a few here that Erica might classify as due to capacity of staff. So Erica, do you want to assist me in weighing in on a couple of examples?
If you could point out which ones, if you're talking about the restrictions and spill containment, or in particular, or if there was other ones.
Maybe let's walk through all of the deferred projects. So we start with the library roof repair, and then we'll just get some comments on each of these. But with respect to the library roof repair, that's an example of money. So we are moving money back from the CIP to balance the budget this year. And also it's sort of a pause as we continue to talk about the City Hall replacement. Repainting the fire station is a deferral item. And so that's an item that is due to cost. There are alternatives where we could paint half the building, one side of it that has the sun exposure, and reduce some of that expense. I'm recommending that we defer it and we do it comprehensively. And then I'm receiving a note from the Public Works Director on some water items, but we'll go first next to the streets. So the Sulfur Creek or capacity issue for us. You're muted.
Yeah, everyone was muted there for a minute, so I didn't hear you. Were you talking about the Sulfur Creek erosion or sediment removal? That's actually reversed.
R1903.
R1903 is in progress, and we're anticipating we receive permits either this summer to potentially construct by this fall. This is actually reversed. R1904 is the one that's. Oh, it's in. That is. I read it backwards on one. Was the one? Okay, so the staff report has it correct. The slideshow has it backwards. In the actual staff report, R1903 is in progress, and then R1904 is the one that's deferred. R1903, the Sulfur Creek erosion report, is part of the flood control project. So we still have funds separate designated for this repair, so it's in progress. Whereas the sediment removal is a long time concern about dredging on, so we're assisting it's a public-private partnership. That one, we're still trying to do the permitting in-house to assist with that project moving forward next year.
And Erica, also on R1904, the Sulfur Creek sediment removal, we did do a portion of that work in front of the bridge.
Correct.
This past year. So we did receive permitting and execute and did in-house some sediment removal. This is just additional removal, primarily south of the bridge, or does it also include, I'm sorry, not south, but east of the bridge, but also west of the bridge?
Primarily, this would be east of the bridge, right? I believe the concerns are with flooding.
Right.
Downstream, yes. Between Highway 29 and Valley View.
Okay, and then the next deferred project is W18-111 under the CIP list for water.
This has to do with like an overview condition of the plant. It hasn't been RFP'd yet, and so I think the verdict of design was actually in this coming fiscal year. So it says deferred, but it actually says to start in 21. So I think there's just a typo there.
And then the next one is the spill containment at Bell Creek, 112.
This is work that we think we could take care of in-house. So maybe that's why there was a word deferred there by accident. But the spill containment at Bell Creek, Stonebridge Wells, and the restriction at Rutherford Pump, those were all projects that we believe we can take care of in-house. And it's a matter of scheduling with staff.
And an alternative would have been previously to contract that out, which is sort of a reason why it may show up in this as a CIP type project, when in fact we could do it with our own people potentially, now that we've better staffed and reorganized the department to create more capacity for our public works employees.
Correct.
Okay, did I cover all of those? I think that's all of the deferral projects.
114 and 115. That should be it on the deferred.
Vice Mayor Doring, does that help answer some questions on the deferral projects?
Yes, I recognize there's a lot of work to be done and we have capacity and financial issues. I just get a little nervous about anything to do with health and safety and the delivery of water and the treatment of wastewater. And so I defer to experts on those areas, but I just need the information so that we can exercise oversight and go, oh, this is much more of a priority. And so you've laid that out pretty clearly, and I thought you gave a good response. We just have to keep in mind what it is that our core mission is, and that's obviously related to water and sewer and law enforcement and fire. And so as we move forward, we have to kind of hone in on those. And we're not experts, so we rely on communication from you to help us make these decisions. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Koberstein?
Unless I missed it, we did not discuss the Crenella pump station, which is also on the deferral list. And I know part of that can be paid for by impact fees, but is this a timing problem with the permits and the design, or what is it?
It's financial. We had a plan that was presented to council earlier this year in order to pay for the wastewater treatment plant phase 1 upgrades. So it's a matter of, do we see how that project comes in financially wise, how much we can get in loans, and what needs to be borrowed to fund the entire project, and then see how we can fund the Crenella pump station. That's part of why the delay in the first place was to see, do we have all the financial we need to actually deliver the big project, which is the plant, since we're under a cease and desist order.
I think in the past, some of the old wastewater bonds combined projects. Is that something we're looking at, where there's more than one project funded by a bond, or is that not a best idea to do. April,
It
maybe.
could, yeah, that is definitely what typically happens for either any of the utilities for water or wastewater. You combine projects. However, our limitation is debt capacity. So based on what our revenues are, we cannot actually borrow that much money to cover, at least this point, it looks like both of the projects. Because initially when the rate study was done for the wastewater side, the wastewater treatment plant upgrades was put in the rate study as lower than what it's potentially going to come out to be, as well as we had the error in the rate calculation, which also diminished our borrowing capacity. Initially, we could have borrowed up to about 15 million, and it was diminished to about 8 million. So because of the increased costs and the diminished borrowing capacity, we will not be able to borrow that much money to do both projects. At least for right now, we are still, once we get the final dollar amounts for the projects in, that will give us a better idea of hard numbers that we can work with our municipal finance advisor.
Thank you.
And I also want to add to that. This is the Cornella Pump Station's a project where, you know, we're going to keep our eye open for shovel-ready project grant opportunities, because that's a project that could go. And as you recall, just about 2 months, maybe it was 3 months ago now, just about the time pre-COVID, we felt that that project had a potential to be fully funded with an over-the-counter grant through CDBG. So we went door to door knocking after hours to do everything we could to set ourselves up for a potential grant. Unfortunately, we didn't meet the criteria, and so we weren't eligible to apply for that grant, but we're going to keep our eyes open, and we're hopeful that there will be some form of stimulus money that a project like Cornella could move quickly on. And that's an example of one that we're going to be ready to advance if there's an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Any additional, I'm going to make just a couple comments here. I want to first commend staff on the substantial list of projects underway. I'm glad we touched on the Cornella pump station. I had a question on Sulfur Creek, the sediment removal. If that's a financial issue, do we have an estimate of cost sort of in terms of completion on that?
When we were approached for this from Harold Sip and Sons, the one that actually owns that stream reach, it's private property. It was like assisting them with with the actual permit, acquiring the regulatory permit, and then the idea was that they were going to move forward with excavating that material as they've done in the past. So it's a matter of the city assisting the county flood control project. District has helped get some cross sections from the Napa County Resources Conservation District. So it's just the timing and having the staff time to coordinate all that with Harold Smith.
Okay, so it's a permitting timing issue as opposed to financial at this point. On that.
Correct.
Okay, and then the other question I had on the Rutherford, the pump station, is there any indication from the county or the city of Napa to work together on a project like that, since that's sort of a link? That's sort of, I believe, where the link occurs to the city of Napa water supply, and it's in the unincorporated area. Is there any indication of from the county or city of Napa that they could be helpful in this?
The Rutherford pump upgrade is completely the city's. If you're referring to the Dryer pump station, is that on this list or shown on here earlier? That one's really, that's the connection of Calistoga, city of Napa, and city of St. Helena. We were waitlisted or shortlisted for a Cal OES grant. City of Napa applied for a $5 million grant to upgrade that booster station. That'll be a significant savings to the ratepayers, as it will half the actual need of the funds, I think from 2 million down to 1 million. And I want to keep that in the budget for this year, because they asked if the grant is awarded this summer or sometime that we can move forward with that project, and then our share will go to the city of Napa.
Okay, very good. Any other council comments at this point? So with that, I will move on. I will give this back to Ms. Mitz. Or Mr. Presswich.
There's a whole lot of buttons to press. Okay, thank you very much for the feedback. So the next item is that we do want to talk about just some other general fund updates that we have. There's been recent inquiries regarding transient occupancy tax, so we'll review the TOT first. We have had inquiries to see are we updating any of those projections at this point? Right now, we are not updating any of those projections. I did reach out to Visit Napa Valley just to verify what their projections were for next fiscal year as far as their TOT goes. And what they are doing, ironically, we modeled our TOT projections off of what the county is doing, which is a very conservative posture. Definitely want to be conservative in how much we think that we might take in because we don't want to overshoot it. Independently, Visit Napa Valley, what they did is they also did their forecast for TID, which is directly proportionate to TOT tax. So they did their own separate methodology, did it completely different than Napa County. And ironically, even though per month they show different amounts that are actually being different percentages collected, when you look at the net effect for the end of next fiscal year, the net effect for what the county did as well as Visit Napa Valley did was almost exactly the same. So at this point, I do feel good about the assumptions that we have in there, and then just watching TOT on a month-by-month basis to see if we're seeing more people come into our hotels than not. One of the surveys that Visit Napa Valley did do, and we also know that it's going to be a focus of their marketing campaign as well as our local marketing campaign with Yountville and Calistoga, is that we really want to push those people that may not be comfortable flying. We want to push the drive to St. Helena to be local. So are they within a couple hours of driving to St. Helena? I mean, looking at Visit Napa Valley statistics, and this was pre-COVID-19, so pre the push to be able to do drive trips, 65% of the visitors that Visit Napa Valley has tracked were actually local people, so within a 2-hour drive. And it's also noted that they're day trippers. So those are not people that would typically be staying overnight in a hotel. So because of those reasons, right now we are not looking at reforecasting our TOT and changing the assumptions. However, that being said, once hotels start to become open, what we'll do is we will look at those numbers and see if there are any changes in the numbers. Another interesting point to look at is that when hotels do reopen, what are the restrictions that are going to be placed on them? We do know for some restaurants and for establishments, it's 50% occupancy every other table. There are some regulations out there that I need to look into a little bit further, but it has been reported that some of the reopening for hotels might also be that when a guest checks out, that room is completely closed down, it's clean, and it cannot be rechecked out to somebody for 24 to 48 hours, which will automatically affect occupancy. So at that point, it literally limits the hotel down to 50% occupancy just by default for that fact alone for the cleaning requirements. So something to keep in mind. So we just thought we would give the City Council and the public an update on the TOT assumptions, and what we're looking at now is not redoing our assumptions, but seeing what happens during July, August, and September. The additional discussion, which I can turn over to Mr. Presswich, as we touched on earlier, is a discussion regarding the fireworks, and to see if that is something that we potentially will cancel this year and reallocate the funds otherwise. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Presswich.
So this is really a policy question for the council. This is a $40,000 investment in fireworks. Our understanding is that our neighbors have canceled, and the question before that we would like to have some clarity on is your preference to either continue with the plan or for us to cancel, and we'll need to notify them this week.
Thank you. So just that's the way everybody else is leaning or has already leaned, our neighbors. That's certainly the direction I'm leaning. Are there any comments from council at this point on that? If we can give direction to staff. Ms. Chateau.
I'm in the same spot. It's sad, it's disappointing, but it's the right way to go with what everybody else is doing and the exposure with the amount of numbers and people and safety that would be impacted with everybody coming here. And it was also wonderful to hear that St. Helena is considering a really unique opportunity with the cameo that could also bring something special to us and to celebrate the holiday and a safe to go towards the cameo. I know my internet was just unstable. Did everybody hear that?
I think we got the gist of it. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. Can I
Mr. Corey?
are we just doing fire? Are we also making comments on the budget conversation?
I think right now we're discussing the fireworks, Mr. Presswich, to get some clarity on that, and then we'll circle back on the others if that's
Great.
Sure. Everything is fine.
Vice Mayor, did you have a comment?
We need to cancel the fireworks, obviously. I mean, there's very clear there. I just want to add, and I don't mean to be offensive, but I think it's important for us to make sure we keep in mind that St. Helena has unique issues and unique challenges, and that sometimes we have this tendency to say, well, that's what somebody else is doing. I think we need to be the model of behavior, and people need to follow us because our challenges are slightly, you know, I have the benefit of being on the council and working in Calistoga, completely different issues there than here. But I think we need to be cognizant of that we don't always have to be following others. We could be leading the charge here and let others follow us. But on this one issue, yeah, it just doesn't make sense to continue with it. And it does make sense to reallocate those funds to the other things we discussed as earlier in the day.
Thank you. Councilperson Koberstein, did you have a comment?
Only that I agree with the comments of Anna and Paul.
Okay, very good. And so in terms of, I think it's exciting that we're seeing an option on the 4th of July through the cameo. It makes it a more comfortable decision. Certainly it's the decision we have to make to cancel the fireworks. In terms of, and so seeing that replacement is great. In terms of working consistently with our neighboring cities, you know, during this COVID situation and the Corona situation, the consistent dialogue between the cities has allowed us to work consistently. And that's been helpful so that the folks in our different communities see that we are moving together. I agree, this is a different town than Calistoga or Yountville or Napa or American Canyon with unique issues. I think on some issues we lead. On some issues, we learn from other towns, things that they're doing that are excellent that we can learn from, and they learn from us. So I think, you know, communication and dialogue with our neighbors helps us become better and helps them become better when we're the ones with the first good idea. So I think it's the dialogue is good. So in this case, we saw some movement forward earlier from the other cities. We were weighing what we were going to do, and I think we're making an excellent decision by stepping away from the fireworks and reallocating that money. So with that,
I just want to say that my decision has nothing to do with what the other communities have done. It's best for our community.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Presswich?
That's helpful and provides the clarity. And I think at this time we have one other item or a couple of items on the general fund updates that April will discuss.
Okay, and then we can circle back with council questions on the other items as we get some space. Mute, April. You're mute, April.
As soon as you screen share it, it's hard to try to find where the unmute button is. My apologies. So that's technology. So the last item for the general fund updates that we did want to talk about is additional revenue options, because it was listed as one of the core strategies for the budget cycle this year. And so one of the things that we are going to be bringing to City Council, and it looks like it will be on June 6th, is additional cost recovery that the city could potentially get based on our user fee study. So right now, the general overview of the user fee study, the preliminary indications that we're getting is we are definitely undercharging for some of our recovery costs. However, this is going to be a council policy decision on what the appropriate level of cost recovery is. And so that is something we will have the preliminary numbers from Wilden, from the consultants, for the June 9th meeting that we will be reviewing with City Council to get your feedback and your guidance and your policy direction on which areas do we want to get how much cost recovery for, as well as what are some of the standards. And so that's something that we will be bringing to you, and that could create additional revenue options based on what the cost recovery goals will be determined by City Council. The other items that we're looking at right now is increased recovery of different fees, such as deposit accounts for planning fees for the larger projects. Typically for the smaller projects that come in over the counter, we charge our regular building and planning fees for those projects that come in, and that typically will cover staff time. However, some of the larger projects, the staff time that's expended far exceeds the amount of the fee itself. So that's something that we're looking at beefing up that program, so to speak, where we'll start getting larger deposit accounts to cover these planning fees to make sure that we have full cost recovery from the developers. So just want to let you know what some of the additional revenue options that we're currently looking at. Another one that did come up recently was tennis courts and the rentals the use of the tennis courts by tennis court pros. So something that we're looking at as well to see the declining revenues over the years. Right now, it looks like it's a pretty minimal declining revenue, but it is something that we want to address because in this state that we're in, every dollar counts.
And Mayor, this is a good time for us to receive just general questions on the general fund updates that the council members may have.
Very good. Thank you. I'm seeing a question from Ms. Koberstein.
The way everything has settled down now, can you remind us of what the general fund position would be? What would the % of our reserves be based on what we've determined so far? Are we down?
April, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I do not have that. I believe it was, oh gosh, you know what? I need to look up to see what it was.
Okay, so we're projecting a close to the current fiscal year with a general fund reserve of approximately $6.1 million. And depending on how much of that we use to balance the next year's budget, right now we're programming 1.74 million of that. So if you deduct the 1.74 from the 6.1, someone can do that math for me real quick. And then as a percentage of the expenditures planned for next year, which I believe are approximately $16 million right now, April.
It is actually lower than that. Yeah, 16 million is what our current year budget is. I believe it's closer to the 11 or $12 million mark.
Well, I think you can look at this two different ways because the total expenditures are higher than 11 or 12 million. They're being supported by use of general fund reserves and anticipated revenue enhancement. So the total expenditures is higher if we count the use of general fund reserves, and that will place the general fund reserve balance, I think, between 25 and 30% after adoption of the budget. These are numbers that are going to be refined over the coming weeks, but that's sort of the area that we're in right now. Between 25 and 30% would be the ending fund balance at the end of next fiscal year with the planned adoption of the budget at the moment.
And that dollar number is basically the 6.1 minus the 1.74, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional council questions at this point? Mr. Doring, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but we may run out of time for me to at least get this on the table. You know, we have an existing work plan and we committed to stay with the work plan, but we've really never discussed it in detail. I'm somewhat concerned that we're not really engaging with the community in terms of moving forward over the next fiscal year and years to come. You know, we traditionally would have a goal setting meeting and we'd get into the nitty gritty of our work plan. We would get feedback from our community. That is obviously very hampered right now. And I know it's sort of, we're getting a little backwards here. We're going through a budget and we are sort of the five of us are making a decision for our community. There are opportunity for input, but I think the city manager, it would be important for you to discuss how we intend to get that input. I would ask that you think about maybe doing a community survey that's maybe a survey that has COVID-19 implications. What does the community expect of this city council going forward? I think that would be important for us to do. The mayor made a comment earlier on about climate change, and I can assure you that climate change has not stopped. And I would like to have some opportunity, maybe over the next couple months, to hone in on that issue, because it sort of gets lost with all these larger issues. Climate change and our climate action plan that we should do, probably have to do in conjunction with our general plan. That's not a discussion today, but I don't want it to get lost, because I think there's so many opportunities there that would help our economy and our community if we have a plan in place. And I would commend the staff to kind of focus in on that. Again, I don't want to load the community or the staff on that, but it's important enough that somehow it needs to be absorbed into the work plan, or at least put on the radar. I'm just asking for it to be put on the radar. I agree with the mayor that that's extremely important for our community.
So just to specifically answer those questions one by one, yes, we were anticipating a conversation earlier in 2020, pre-COVID, on our work plan, and it was about ready for, we were literally at a point where we were picking a date, trying to pick a date. And as you know, we stood up and supported a infrastructure task force at the beginning of this year that then with the advancement of the COVID and the transition from the smoke damaged city hall to the new city hall was caught in in the middle of all of that. We're bringing the work plan conversation to the council on June 9th. This will be the second year that we've adjusted. This would be the second year that we've adjusted the 3-year goals. So as you recall, last year we added a 5th goal and we sort of coalesced 2 other goals into a single goal. And each of those have a variety of work plan tasks associated with them. We presented a copy of that to the council on May 14th, and we will be presenting that same document and scheduling a discussion at the meeting of June 9th. The purpose of June 9th is selecting that date was to enhance the public participation in that. We've previously had conversations around our work plan in special meetings, but we had a little bit more capacity on that calendar. We're loading it up with a full budget as well. But we anticipate having a little more capacity on the 9th for a broader conversation. So we'll welcome community feedback on the work plan, as well as council input on the draft in terms of its priorities. So it does have a color-coded prioritization level where a certain color is we are moving forward on these. The second priority is when we finish those and we have capacity, we'll take on these others that are identified in yellow, and we have some that are identified as red that we would recommend moving to the following fiscal year, or calendar year. So that conversation is scheduled for the 9th, our next council meeting. And then with respect to the climate change issue, we have, as you know, a couple of council members, the mayor and council member Chateau, who are participating in a regional conversation on all things climate change. And then with the adoption of the general plan last year, our planning department is now taking a look at the 51, I believe, initiatives. There's a chapter on climate change, and we have, I believe, 51 individual initiatives. And the challenge for our staff, which they will then be also asking our active transportation and sustainability committee for their reaction to this. But my challenge is, let's take those 51 items and classify them as either near term, defined as the next year or two, for targeting and accomplishing, or longer term, defined as the next 3 to 5 years. So we have started that exercise, and we have an initial draft that we will be sharing soon with the ATSC committee, getting their feedback on that. Did we pick these right? what are we missing? Are there adjustments that they recommend? And then we would anticipate bringing that to the council for some essentially guidance on, are we on the right track here? So that's a little where we are on the climate change item, specifically related to the general plan.
Ms. Chateau?
Well, let me
I'm
just,
sorry. I'll go back to Mr. Doring and then come back.
well, I didn't get the potential for a community survey. Is that something that we can discuss
I'm
at
sorry.
some point? Yeah,
Yes, thank you. On the survey, I was thinking about this in mid to late 2019 because, and really every year I've been here, because I think that community surveys, and I've worked on a couple of these. We did this in my prior city. They're very helpful in informing budget decisions. So in hindsight, it would have been wonderful to have a survey done in late December or January to help provide the council with some feedback. And there's some really nice models out there that we can customize for the specific questions that the council would like to work on or receive feedback on. Those are relatively easy to get started, and we would typically do that by mail. And if there's council interest in conducting a survey relatively soon, what I would request is we have a couple of council members that would work with staff to develop a draft that we can bring back to the council for approval before it goes out the door. And then we would typically keep that open for about 3 or 4 weeks, aggregate the data, and then present the findings of that research. So if there's council interest in that now, we can absolutely put something together. I've worked on a lot of these in the past, and know that there are some models. That there's one called the National Citizen Survey that has a number of questions that then can be customized. We can add or delete questions. If we use those same questions over time, let's say every 3 to 5 years, we can produce trends and analyze those trends in our community relative to how, and really benchmark. If we wanted to go to the full mile here, we could benchmark with other cities of similar size around the country. So I'll look for feedback on the council's interest on a community survey.
Thank you. And so with that, that's certainly something I would be interested in participating in unless there are other council members that would want to be doing that. Mr. Doring, is that something that you would want to be?
I'm surprised that Councilmember Koberstein hasn't suggested that I participate. I'd be happy to.
Oh, I'm happy to as well, unless I'm seeing another member here. Okay, so that's something that the Vice Mayor and myself can join you with, Mr. Prestwich.
And I'm looking for nods from the other council members that this is okay, good.
And then Ms. Chateau has a comment.
Just about keeping it simple, I think, and really not something that people have to spend a lot of time on. And I like the idea of anything with a survey, connecting it back, being really clear about how we're using the data and then what it's for. I loved the idea recently about hearing, I think it was Healdsburg where I saw that in their information on a program that they'd collected some survey information on priorities. It was really simple about budgeting, or what the community wanted when we do have to make these hard choices. What does the community want us to spend money on and prioritize, put our energy and staff attention to? So I thought that was a good idea.
Do you have access to a copy of that, Ms. Chateau, that you could provide the staff?
I don't have access to a copy of that, but I can pull out where I saw that and send it.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments at this point? Mr. Knudsen.
I'm sorry, I am a late participant in the meeting. This COVID stuff is very disruptive, isn't it, for all the things that we need to get done. Is this the end of the meeting?
We have another 50 minutes, I believe.
No, but where are we in terms of our agenda, and what have we covered?
We're nearing the final 2 items of discussion.
Okay.
So we have coming the business assistance program concept, as well as the review of the chamber contract.
Okay. So then, just for public record, I'd like to make a comment sort of about our reserves. is it's my belief that I've noticed that some of the estimates of sort of tourist-based dollars have been going down by the county. And we're still my understanding is that we're still flying blind, right? That we just really have no clue as to both how we're finishing out this fiscal year and what the next fiscal year might look like. And that means to me that our reserves, in my mind, we're really looking at a $12 million budget sort of baseline going forward. And so therefore having a third in reserves, having at least a 4-month runway is incredibly important. And that's important from a float perspective because we have to, sort of manage our finances. And it's also important from just to make sure that we can, at a minimum, always provide public safety. And so as we learn more, I just think that we really have to keep that 4 million sacrosanct. When we ran into trouble 11 years ago, it's because we had no reserves, and then we had to slash things sort of indiscriminately. And I want to avoid that in the future. But in my mind, if we can't keep our reserves as we get data coming in, we really would need to consider being even more significant in terms of budgetary cuts. I want to preserve services in all ways to our residents. And I think keeping staff to do that is incredibly important. But at the end of the day, if the numbers don't come, the numbers don't come. So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional council comment at this point? Okay, seeing none, we can move now, Mr. Presswich, to the next items.
So we'll have April speak to some additional research we've done with respect to business assistance.
Great, thank you very much. So this is just a quick recap of what was already presented to City Council on Tuesday night regarding other business assistance programs. So what we did is we did a side-by-side comparison with Healdsburg and Roseville, and inside inside the document, the actual staff report that was presented today, we did float the idea of potentially opening up the business assistance program and developing something for St. Helena, that maybe it's a phased approach where potentially we start with $100,000 as the initial St. Helena investment. And we were able to identify in this current fiscal year that we do have about $100,000 that we're not going to use, that was not projected in the original economic impact that we took to City Council in April. So it will not affect the numbers that were already presented for how we thought we might end up this year. So that is $100,000. It's something that if we can get a start on a business assistance program in this current fiscal year, we can see how many people are willing to participate in the program, as well as move forward to see if there's any additional resources that can be allocated once we start seeing more of the numbers come in. And so this is an overview of the program that we presented the other day, that Healdsburg and Roseville. So it gives you an idea of how much they're spending, what are some of the things they're doing. Some additional research that we did was different criteria methods. So we wanted to get some just general council feedback and get your feelings on some of these sample criteria. This list is definitely not all inclusive. As we're researching more and more programs, we're finding out more and more. But some of the criteria that initially we were looking at is that they have to be in business by a certain date. So for instance, March 1st, whatever the target date is, they would have actually already had to be in business. So it cannot be a new business that's starting up. They would have to have an active business license, 25 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. It would have to be a for-profit organization. So they would in turn give sales tax revenues back to the city. They would have to be in good standing, which is utility payments are all made and payable. There's no legal issues pending with this particular entity. It would have to be a storefront that is located within city limits. So we want to make sure that we limit it to people within the city. It would be a retail service and restaurant or restaurant. And then they would also have to show us that they had a hardship as a result of COVID-19, so that there weren't financial hardships or potential bankruptcy or any of those proceedings prior to COVID-19. So again, those are some sample criteria that we're able to come up with. And what our initial plan is to do is to come up with a draft business assistance program to present at City Council for approval at the June 9th meeting. And so that way, once we have approval of it, we have the criteria in place. We are looking at doing it a first come, first served basis. And so once we have that criteria developed, we are hoping we could approve it at the June 9th meeting, allocate approximately $100,000 in this current fiscal year for the program. And that way we can maybe get a jump start on it to kind of see what the pulse is. We also know that Amy Caraba at the Chamber is starting to survey some of the local businesses to see what their feeling is, and hopefully we'll get some results. It looks like we have some preliminary results, which about 70% of the people within the Chamber had already said that they'd receive prior federal aid through the various acts that were enacted by the federal government. So some of them might not even be interested in applying for this program. So that's just some general ideas we had. Want to get some council feedback, and I'd be open to Mark if you had any other items I might have forgotten about this, since it was a quick development since Tuesday.
I think you did a nice job of summarizing what a program like this could look like and how it would deploy.
Thank you. Are there any initial council comments or questions here at this point? Ms. Koberstein?
I think this is money well invested because it may allow our sales tax receipts in particular to not continue to decline. I would like to start at a higher number. I don't want to replicate the federal program where there was a massive rush for assistance and then the money ran out and people got discouraged. I would rather go a little higher and not use all the money than have to come back for further council authorization. I prefer, as I said the other day, that we try to do this as quickly as possible. I think that time is really of the essence for a lot of these businesses, and direct outreach with our staff in these Friday business meetings that you're conducting. Maybe interested businesses follow up directly with Stephanie if she's the one working on that particular effort. I think, even with the numbers that Councilmember Knudsen just ran, if we currently have 4.3 or 4.36 of reserves, we could take some more money out of the reserves and we would still be at his 30% number, I think, which was based on a $12 million budget. But I would rather start higher. At $20,000, you're talking about 5 businesses only being allowed to get these loans, and then we would have to re-energize the program for more people to participate.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chateau, I'm seeing your hand.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable staying with what the number that we can afford, which I heard the 100,000 to start, because I think unlike the federal government, we can be more nimble with this, and so much is changing. And if we find that we do have a much bigger need, I think that we can address it, and that we need to understand where the money's coming from. And there's so much unknown about what the cost will be, or if we have extra money, that would be fantastic and we can put it back into this. So that's what I'm thinking right now. Also, there's just more unknown even with our own staff in terms of, are we going to have a couple more people that will want to do the retirement or not? And I want to have a better understanding of all of that before making the decision to use our reserves for this.
Okay. Any other council comment at this point? Did we lose? Mr. Vice Mayor Doring?
I absolutely agree with Councilmember Knudsen regarding the maintenance of our reserve. As soon as I got on the council, now I guess 6 years ago, that was one of the first things I focused on. And we set a policy, we need to keep it in place, because I did see the past where we didn't have those reserves. But I think I agree with the comment that we still have maybe a little bit more room on the reserve, and it would be interesting to see what the city manager thinks about that part of it. Between 4 and 4.36 million, there may be some room to start out a little higher than $100,000. We can still be nimble. I mean, the best case scenario is nobody comes and applies for it. I mean, that's a cynical comment. You would hope that people do apply for it, but it just seems it'd be nice to allocate it and see what happens. I'm actually thinking 200,000 at minimum, but and hope, and because we're only going to hit 5 or 8 businesses with 100,000, and I think the demand is higher than that. I could be wrong. I'd rather start high and then go, oh, we didn't use all that. Good. We now can move that somewhere else. But it would be interesting to hear from the finance director and the city manager regarding, the importance of the reserve, but maybe there's a little bit more money there before we get under, 30%.
Right. So just a couple thoughts. The numbers that the finance director was referring to, the $100,000, these are funds that we were anticipating spending this year that we believe will be available and not spent. It's money out of the city attorney's budget, and given that, the only risk I think I'm foreseeing on the revenue side as we close the current fiscal year is I think the sales tax numbers for April are going to be depressed, lower than what our forecast is. So we know our March numbers were off by about $21,000. It was a pretty good guess in terms of our estimate. So not too much of a margin of error. I think we should anticipate a larger loss relative to our adjusted forecast for the month of April, maybe about where we were for May, and June maybe a little, about the same or better. So little unknown and uncertainty there. We have identified about $160,000. And so using 100 of that is a guard, it provides a little bit of guard against some volatility on our sales tax side. And then so that would be current year dollars available. And then turning to next year's budget, we at the moment have an $841,000 gap on the labor strategy. I'm optimistic that we will have strategies that closes almost all of that, if not all of it, through a combination of working with our labor groups as well as the retirement incentive program. The comment about the reserves, we have only programmed approximately, so the gap we're solving for right now is $5.8 million. And the use of general fund reserves represents 30% of that number to the tune of $1.74 million. But as you recall, on May 14th, I believe that staff report indicated the city manager was comfortable with using up to 1/3 of the general fund reserves that we project at the end of the current fiscal year. We think that's going to be in the low $6 million range, 6.1, somewhere in there. So that number would translate to up to $2 million essentially, that I would feel comfortable using. So today that represents about an extra $250,000 of resources. I was thinking of that as a potential pool of resources to assist with any gaps that remain on our labor strategy or on the revenue strategy, or if we couldn't find additional budget cuts. So the concept that the finance director introduced in terms of a phased approach, our thought was just behind the scenes thinking about this over the last week would be the concept of deploying the program on June 10th with 100, waiting until the 23rd, which would still allow for some investment that could go out before the end of the month when some of these rents might be due. But waiting for us to have a little more clarity on the labor side. So I would, I think it's a policy choice of whether you use an additional 100. I think that would still leave $150,000 of solution that would be available as a buffer to some of the issues that we're going to be working on with our labor groups. So I think there's a pathway to funding 200. An alternate pathway would be funding it now, The alternate pathway would be to pause the second 100 for discussion on the 23rd and deploy the additional 100 on the 24th. But it's, to me, that's a, there's a couple different options here, and looking for council direction on those.
Ms. Koberstein, I'm seeing your hand.
I mean, is it possible for the city to communicate the broad outlines of this program to the business community quickly, so that the next time we meet, we have a better idea of how much demand there is for it? It might help us, fine tune the numbers. I think that would be helpful. We're sort of guessing. We did get one email addressed to us about the urgent need for this, and maybe we could flesh that out before we meet again as a council.
Thank you. I'm seeing Mr. Knudsen back on with us. We are discussing the business assistance.
I can tell. I'm sorry, my Comcast went down and then came back up. So here I am again. Super challenged today. I have a couple of comments, and I'm sorry if this has already been covered. I just want to make sure that that the community, the folks in the community, the business community has availed themselves of federal programs, and I think that should be a requirement as well. There's the PPP program and the EIDL program, I believe, and both of those, they're easy to apply for. One is directly with this SBA and one is through your bank. And I would say that that should be a requirement of us to provide additional loans, is that they've already availed themselves of the federal program. And then I'd also like to just sort of raise the concept of liquidity versus solvency. Liquidity is, the business is a viable business. And I think that's what we all hope that is true for all of our businesses on Main Street, is that they remain to be viable businesses, and that there's simply a mismatch between their expenses and when the income will start to come again. Solvency is about businesses that are actually not going to survive. And I pray and hope that that's not true of our businesses in town, because I appreciate and like each one of them. But solvency means that basically any amounts that were delivered by the city would not be returned. And so, because I think it's our city's money, I think that we should attach personal liability to those folks that make these loans, or at least I know there are many LLCs that run businesses, and perhaps it's some sort of 20 or 25% ownership stake, because we're not intended to sort of stave off bankruptcy here. We're intended to help provide liquidity to these businesses as they reopen. And then also I just focus on only certain uses allowed. I really want to focus on employees and people earning money in our town, and I think that would be a helpful way to focus this. And I'd also like to see if there's ways for the nonprofits that we could also extend the program to them. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional council comments at this point? So, Ms. Koberstein?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize a couple of points. This is an investment in our local business community. If they go away, and stores are currently closing, St. Helena is going to change in a significant way forever. If they stay in business, they're not just solvent, they're pumping out sales tax to us, which is one of our revenue sources. We regularly take the citizens' money and we dedicate it towards marketing and other things, and we don't know the metrics exactly of how it pays off. And I don't feel that this should be somehow treated differently. It's the same kind of investment. It's more direct, and it might be more urgently needed than trying to get folks here in a couple weeks from some other part of the Bay Area. So I strongly support it. I hope we can determine what the demand is and figure out if there's a way we can meet it.
Thank you. I have some comments, unless there's additional comment. One question I want to ask is where are we comfortable in terms of the limit of a potential loan? 20,000 or 15,000? We've seen two different models. Where are we on the council on that number? Do we have any thoughts on that?
I think that's something we could get from the outreach, you know, to get a general idea of what some of the fixed expenses are that people are looking to cover.
Okay, I think that's good. I concur that moving forward with outreach as quickly as possible to understand need is important. I'm somewhat comfortable with the $200,000 number. I'm looking at Healdsburg, and I believe it was 600,000. So ours would be more modest. I do recognize, as Ms. Chateau says, we have the ability to be nimble. If we begin this program with either 100 or 200,000, but we begin it as soon as possible with the outreach to understand what the need is, and then return as soon as possible at the next council opportunity. And also, as Mr. Prestwich says, he's moving a number of different pieces and parts on the budget gap. And so giving him options that he needs to adjust would put me in the place of saying, starting with 100,000, but returning very quickly with a needs assessment. So however, that being said, if Mr. Prestwich feels that he can still operate with another $100,000 dedicated to this program, I'm comfortable looking at 200,000. But what I'd want to hear from Mr. Prestwich is that he feels if he was stuck on that budget gap, that he could look for that 100,000 elsewhere. I believe that's what I heard you say, but I just wanted to get a little clarification.
So I think a couple options. We could use up to 160 right now in the current year and use only 40 of the 250 that's available, potentially available. It's a policy choice on how much of the reserve you use next year. I think my concern closing the current year is I'm uncomfortable about our sales tax projections for April. April and May. June, I'm going to feel a little bit better about, I think, but I'm cautious about April's numbers, and we're not going to know that by the time we adopt the budget. But I think that the volatility there might be maybe a $50,000, maybe off by $50,000, let's say. And so I think all the extra 100 that we use, it would come out of reserves, and it essentially means that we're still solving for $5.8 million. We would have only, depending on how we do the math here, let's say it's you would have a remaining 150 to work with to offset labor issues rather than 250. So it takes away a little bit of our flexibility if we needed it. And I think it's a little early. By even June 9th, I will have more clarity than I do today on how some of these conversations are maturing with respect to the labor side. And we really won't know until the 23rd what the exact gap is. But I think you can safely do the 200, and it takes away about $100,000 of flexibility. And I think of about $100,000 as one of our positions. But again, you have 160 now. We have a little volatility on the sales tax and 250 to work with on the general fund reserves for next year, and an $841,000 gap to solve for.
Okay, where are the other council members now in this? Any input?
Well, I think that's useful information. I think we should see what the demand is. I mean, we know we have a lot of moving parts and we have to solve them, but it'll be easier to solve this one if we actually know how much interest there is in the program and what the level of need is.
So if we commit to the 100,000 today and get the program rolling with the outreach and assessment and the idea that we could come back very quickly if it was a larger need, how does that feel to the council?
That sounds good to me.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
That's fine. I do want to recognize the comment made by Councilmember Knudsen regarding the nonprofits. I had suggested early on in our conversation today that we revisit the nonprofit grant requests, especially obviously those who will not be receiving any dollars, that we come back in 3 months or 6 months to see how things are going and keep those applications open to a certain degree. But I wouldn't have that separate and apart from this, because I think the purpose is different here. I think the purpose is stimulation to keep businesses solvent so that we can generate sales tax going forward. I think they're a little different, but I do recognize the need. I mean, there's a need, frankly, in the professional sector also. There's all kinds of needs, nonprofit, commercial, professional. So I notice that professionals won't be able to apply. That's fine, I can live with that. It's a fairly limited group of businesses that can apply under at least the scenario that was laid out. I know that's not set in stone, but I'm comfortable with the recommendation from the city manager that we do the 100, do the outreach, come back on the 9th, learn a little bit more information, come back on the 23rd with a little bit more information. But I think the point that the Councilmember Koberstein is making is there is a sense of urgency in terms of getting the money out. And yes, there is a risk that it won't get paid back.
Thank you.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Knudsen.
So I think the only, I had some suggested additional criteria. I'm not sure if those are appropriate or not, but I trust staff to figure that out. I do have to say that I think we must be transparent. So if people apply and we give them loans, this is really public record, and I think we shouldn't be hiding this. I think it should be transparent to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Koberstein, did I see you had a comment?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
So when
Keep moving.
Mayor, when this item comes back to you on the 9th, it will be approval of a program, and we may have more data and information. We may have solved for the $841,000 by June 9th, and you will have the flexibility to change the number on June 9th. So if we plan for 100 and that's the way it's set up, it still is a policy choice, and we can adjust that number on June 9th if you would like. And then I have a question for the council as well as a bit of our staff. These are decisions, I think the way these have been set up in other cities is typically first come, first serve. There is having worked on loans before under a CDBG environment, we did it by committee. Committees take longer than an over-the-counter type of staff, process. But with the criteria that we have, I don't know if the council members have an interest in being a part of a process of making those decisions, if there's any involvement in double checking the review of the criteria that we set up. It's something that we can also do some research on and bring you that clarification or a recommendation with the program on June 9th. But perhaps Mandy and April can share with us what they've seen in these other cities as the way they've designed these programs. And also I'm interested in council feedback on that, because at the moment, I think the plan would be to do it over the counter with the applications, and we would get them out the door right away.
That would certainly be the thought that I would have to be able to expedite based on criteria that's been pre-set up. Ms. Koberstein, did I see a question or
Yeah,
a comment?
I agree. I think this should be something that's handled by the staff once we approve the criteria. I will say I am not in favor of the personal guarantee criteria. That was not in the program of either of the other two communities. And my guess is that these people are already sacrificing their personal funds to try to keep their businesses in operation. But otherwise, I think the other model programs that we have with the additional comments are good.
Additional comment, Mr. Knudsen?
So I would also recommend that we sort of have a time period, because I'd hate to sort of have first come, first serve, and then suddenly we don't have any money and it's all. So I'd rather sort of have this time period, you have a week to apply or something, and then at the end of the week, if there's 10 people that have applied and we've got $100,000, at least the first thing could be $10,000 checks. I just would hate to have some folks not be able to participate because they didn't rush to City Hall or to Railroad Avenue or whatever electronically. I'd rather have some sort of timing and then say, okay, at the end of that, then that's when we'll give funds. That's a suggestion.
Excellent suggestion. Thanks.
And with the outreach, what I hope is that we can get this out as quickly as possible, particularly for any business on the edge, to know that help and relief is coming ASAP. So that is my hope, that as soon as, is it tomorrow, the first meeting of this financial, the sort of recovery task force, Mr. Prestwich? Mute.
Sorry about that. It's an ongoing partnership with the chamber, so there is a plan for a call tomorrow, and we can ask that question and advertise the feedback that we received from the City Council today.
Great, because if somebody's on the edge, the sooner that we can give them an assurance that there's some support coming, I think would be very helpful. Any other thoughts on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll move it back to Mr. Prestwich. I think you've got your direction on this, and we have one more item I believe we're going to try to cover before noon.
Yes.
Okay.
So the final item today is a review of the current chamber contract. And so this is one of the contracts that we have, and we're linking it with the current budget priority, which is the investment in business recovery. So as council and the public is aware, we did conduct a phase one, or City Council approved phase one of a marketing campaign, which contributed $25,000 in this current year for a collective targeted marketing strategy that combines the City of Calistoga, City of St. Helena, and the town of Yountville. So that's the phase one marketing campaign that aligns with that budget priority. And then the current contract that we have with the Chamber of Commerce is for $210,000. It was a one-year contract. And so what we want to do today is review what the current scope of work is with the City Council, just as a refresher, get feedback as far as what the current contribution is, if there's feedback on any changes to the current contribution, and or if there's changes to the scope of the contribution, knowing that trying to invest in the business recovery is the marketing efforts of the chamber can provide pretty pivotal for the recovery efforts.
And April, do you mind if I jump in a little bit on that?
Yes, I don't mind.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Also, just for the council to know, we in the current draft budget, we are programming, I believe, April, an additional $25,000 for a phase two marketing if necessary. Okay, so that is correct. There's an additional 25 that's currently programmed for an anticipated phase two marketing partnership with these two other cities. And then secondly, the current draft budget includes an assumption that the current contract of $210,000 with the chamber is sustained. Is that correct, April? We haven't adjusted that number.
That is correct. We have not adjusted that number.
Okay, so that's all I wanted to make sure we all understood the context there.
Great, thank you. So the current chamber contract is broken up into two different sections as far as the scope and work goes. The first is tourism, marketing, and promotional efforts. So under the current scope of work, the chamber's responsibility is to direct and implement a public relations strategy for marketing and exposure of the City of St. Helena as a high-end destination. It is also to direct and implement a marketing strategy with an overall Visit St. Helena message designated to support and benefit all businesses within St. Helena. It is to maintain a robust, timely, and current website and provide a link to the city's website. In addition, I didn't fit it in the bullet points, but they also have as one of their commitments that it is a very user-friendly site and easy to pop around. And I know on the back end of the website, which isn't as glorious as the front end of the website, is they have built up the current website to provide a lot more metrics than the previous website has. So Amy and her team over at the Chamber have been able to consolidate a lot more of the metrics of where people are clicking through. They can see what people are viewing, and they can see what is driving people to stay on the current website. The next item is to operate a staff and a welcome center, and there are very specific hours of operation that are in the current budget or in the current scope of work. And then the final thing under this category is to produce and update as necessary various city promotional information. And so again, between this item and the next item, we'd like to get council feedback if they believe this is an appropriate use of funds, or if they'd like to add or change anything. So with that, I will stop with the first slide and welcome any council feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Mitz. Am I seeing any council question or comment at this point? Ms. Chateau, and then I'll move to Mr. Knudsen.
I just wonder, because what about the fact that the Chamber has been such a good partner right now with the business recovery and getting information to businesses and giving us information from businesses? I don't see that in the scope of work, but I see them doing that. So is that something that could be added to reflect the current environment and how they really are partnering with us on that?
I guess I can comment. I could potentially comment on that. Certainly it can be added. They do have other sources of revenue, and they have a number of different initiatives that they work on each year. We'll talk about a couple of the events on the next slide. And the Chamber Executive Director and CEO, Amy Caraba, is on our call today. So if you have a specific question for her as well, she's available to answer those questions.
Thank you. Oh, so Amy's online. Okay. Any other initial questions here, comments from council? Ms. Koberstein, I'm sorry, Mr. Knudsen, I had pointed to, and then I'll come to you.
Go ahead, Mary, that's fine.
Okay.
Since Amy is on the line, I'm wondering if you could tell us what you see the situation being with the summer concert series that's usually supported. I think it's $10,000, $15,000. Is that just sort of a wait and see, or try to do it with social distancing? What's your thought on that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I'm so glad that you asked. So right now, the plan for the summer concert series, we take you guys out of that 210, 30,000 goes to community events. And then remember, 20 out of that 30 goes to Jingle All the Way. So for summer concert series, I believe the number is about 6,000 that goes to the series. And, or what is it? Let me see.
It's actually 10, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah, that is correct. So the way that basically for summer concert series, is it going to happen this year? No. We are planning on not doing summer concert series. And we're going to be sending out a notice soon. But we are partnering with Kathy on the drive-in movies. So I don't know if she had mentioned that earlier when she was on. And so I had told her that basically a portion of the funds was going to go towards the drive-in. And then we're going to try to do some other type of event. I've been asked to do the sidewalk sale a little bit later since it was missed in May, et cetera. So there is a plan in place. It's just sort of navigating and kind of waiting to see where we are with this shelter at home ordinance and when that's going to lift, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Knudsen?
Yeah, so Amy, I think you guys do a great job at the Chamber. I've been consistently impressed in my time in the public life of St. Helena about the work you're doing. But I want to also say that this is the most controversial aspect of our budget that we ever encounter. And every time it comes before council, I get a flurry of comments from our residents that this is too expensive and we don't get enough value from it. And so I would really encourage you to focus on specific things that help, that in the coming year, given the challenges we're going to face, that are going to focus on really helping our small businesses and helping our residences. And so sort of generalized marketing aimed at the wider world out there, maybe that's not as interesting. Maybe it's sort of more specific focus on events and think that we can socially distance events, whatever they are, that the residents of this town can see that directly help and impact the businesses on Main Street, the businesses in the industrial park, and that they also can participate in. So I think that would be very helpful for the residents that do have concerns about this aspect of our budget. Thank you.
I hear what you're saying, and it's since I became, the president and CEO, it's this constant sort of challenge that I face. But I feel obviously that the chamber has really stepped it up from when I came on board. We have launched more community events. We did move that welcome center. The foot traffic has tripled. Our website traffic is up 94%. Our chamber membership partners are up. Even right now, during a time where a lot of businesses are struggling, we are seeing we're getting new members. We're seeing people join. And so I do think it's important to touch on what you said, David, about community events. Yes, I do think we need to continue that. We launched Neighborhood Table. Jingle All the Way has been very successful the last 2 years. Stephanie and I talked yesterday about what that's going to look like this year. And then, we really got to get other programs up and running, like the Wine Train Project, and not to open up a can of worms, but, things like that the chamber and the city need to work together that will really help the vitality of our businesses. We're very grateful for the contract, the 210. I can't thank you guys enough. We're able to do a lot with that. And I think what other people need to know, residents, is that it's so important that the chamber and the city have a good relationship, and that, the funding is there because we do spend a lot on marketing. And, we work with the Abbey agency and we track everything, and we have metrics for everything so that we can see how well we're doing. And, without that, it's just going to be really hard at the end of the day to support a lot of these downtown businesses if we aren't doing a strong, cohesive marketing plan. And that includes the Welcome Center. It includes all of these things that come together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. And I see a hand from Ms. Chateau.
I just wanted to make the point that I think often there can be confusion about what the chamber does, even the fact that the chamber is responsible for the Citizen of the Year, that wonderful recognition, and also Business of the Year, even Jingle All the Way, or some of these success stories, like talking about this project moving forward with the Cameo. I think sometimes the community doesn't understand how much they're a partner for us with our local businesses, and that story is getting out there more now. Social media, as we've stepped it up with Stephanie with the challenge, you saw that story is being told more.
We seem to be cutting out, Anna. I don't know if it's coming from. Okay, and you're now on mute. I don't know if you okay.
If I could just add something that I wish people knew, and my board and I talk about, I literally wear 3 hats. I wear the hat as the CEO of the chamber. I wear the hat of being in charge and instructing our destination marketing pretty much for the city of St. Helena. That's sthelena.com. It's all the social media platforms that the chamber runs. It's the campaigns that we launch with the Abbey Agency and creating those campaigns and working with Visit Napa Valley, being in alignment with the overall Visit Napa Valley marketing plan. And then on top of that, I also wear a TID hat where I have duties towards the TID and promoting hotels and lodging. And, you know, it's quite a lot on my plate. And I really try very hard to have a nice balance where I'm wearing my chamber CEO hat, I'm supporting our businesses, I'm giving them the resources and tools that they need. When I think of a community event, it's going to support them, promote them, but maybe bring in some people as well. I mean, it's quite a dance that I do when I'm taking all these different hats off. And I just think that's really important for everyone to know that every decision that I make, I keep in mind all these three things, including the importance of our residents and, you know, what the residents want, right? And it's real hard because it's a fine dance of not bringing in too many tourists, but bringing in tourists. So we have a nice vital downtown and businesses are, you know, doing well. And I want you all to know that I think about that every day and I am very strategic. It's one of the reasons why I chose the Abbey Agency, because that marketing firm works with similar cities that has these, and I hate to use the word challenges, but has these, you know, a little bit of a difference of opinion, but you want to keep everybody happy. And so that's just me speaking from my heart and letting you all know that that is at the top of my mind in every decision that I make.
Thank you. And I want to just speak for a moment. I might even get a little emotional doing this. I want to thank Amy and the chamber for the incredible work. They stepped up remarkably in this coronavirus COVID situation. I think the work that they've been doing all year has been excellent, but they've stepped up to a new level for this community, and it should be recognized. Their focus and their ability to implement these new ideas sort of to keep things moving forward. So I just want to say a deep thanks to the chamber. I am supportive of these numbers where things are. I think that there does need to perhaps be some clarity brought to a sort of the changing role here as we look at the what the chamber's been tasked with in the past, what that looks like, and then as we move forward, there may have to be some adjustment in there. So that would be helpful, sort of some clarity on perhaps the Cameo working together relationship and sort of redefining how that money may have to be used. We may just want a little more clarity on that. So that would be helpful.
What I could do is, since we allocate $30,000 to community events, when I get a little bit of a better idea of when basically when we fully open up, right? I could send an update on how that $30,000 would essentially be allocated. It would still be allocated towards the community events. I can promise that. And obviously summer concert series for next year would happen. And part of summer concert series lies in both fiscal years. So part of that $30,000 budget, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to confuse you. So
look, you know, I don't think we have to get too deeply into the specifics right now, but as we move forward, I think we'll want a little bit just of clarity, because things have shifted a little bit since the corona situation. I'm comfortable, as I said, with the existing numbers. I'm guess looking around at the rest of the council to see where the rest of the council is on that. I think
I am absolutely supportive.
Any other thought, Ms. Goberstein?
I'm comfortable with them. I am hoping that the first 25,000 that went out the door for special marketing for Calistoga, Yountville, St. Helena, I hope we get some feedback on what that actually, how it's going. before the next 25 goes out the door. Because my understanding is that this 50,000 is on top of the regular money that's in the budget for marketing St. Helena. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional council comment? Or Amy, did you have a comment?
You know, since I have everybody here, I think it would be very helpful if the chamber, and I can make sure that I'm doing this, I send quarterly or if not monthly updates so that you guys can see the progress that's happening on the marketing front. I think that might be helpful just moving forward. So I'll do that. And then one last thing, I'll just, back to that 30,000, if we can keep it to community events, that's great. And then we can figure out how it's going to be allocated. So obviously some would go to the drive-in movies in replace of summer concert series, etc. Just to clarify, so we're on the same page.
And my thought is that because of the sort of fluid nature of this situation, that getting a report certainly monthly rather than quarterly would be helpful, because we're seeing things changing in real time. And then an update perhaps a little sooner, sort of understanding what the new approach might be. And I think that could be coordinated through certainly the city manager. Any other council thoughts? Mr. Doring, Vice Mayor?
Where do we get the tickets for the drive-in theater?
You're going to go to her website.
Okay.
We're still working this out. So you'll log on to Cameo's website, get the ticket. We've got the spot. I think Kathy told you guys it's going to be actually in the Chamber's old parking lot right behind Nimbus. And we're just working out restrooms right now, and then partnerships with Cliff Family, Trey Posty, and possibly Gott's for like to-go meals. And I'm sure she expressed she wants this to go beyond summer. So that's kind of the plan.
Cool. Just for some context, Calistoga has allocated over the last few years $497,000 to their Chamber of Commerce and their visitor center accommodation. This year they dropped, I think they reduced it down to $300,000. We are in a competitive world. Every business is out there trying to promote their businesses. We're promoting St. Helena. It's always very difficult to explain to residents the value of it, but I do see the value, especially when we're competing with other jurisdictions. I do think that we could be better at self-promotion of the chamber to its own community. And I think that's the strength of Calistoga. I think when I was on the city council back in the day, it was the same thing, hammered every year about money given to the chamber. Ultimately, the chamber got it and started doing more programming and events where folks then became accustomed to that. And this relationship between the chamber and the residents softened. So I'm hopeful that over time we'll continue to do better there, where there's a linkage between the chamber and the residents. And I would say the chamber has to do more self-promotion. You know, you're doing a lot. The residents sometimes don't see it or don't connect it to your work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any, Mr. Knudsen?
Yeah, final comment. Amy, thanks very much. Appreciate all the comments from all my fellow council members. Also, just given the location, I hope that you guys could work with Azteca Market as well from a to-go for that drive-in theater, because they're right there.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I think anyone can really participate. Honestly, any restaurant could put together a to-go meal and then people could pick it up and take it. So
yeah, let's reach out to some of the folks that may not be thinking as flexibly that way. So Azteca, and if there are others, that'd be great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe we've given the direction to the city manager. Do you feel you have, and with that, Amy, I just want to thank you again. And if you can pass my thanks and our thanks on to the chamber team and the board and everybody for the work that you've been doing. So I want to make sure that appreciation gets expressed.
No, I appreciate that. And thank you to council too. I really welcome the feedback. I love when I get an email from a council member saying, hey, can you guys do this? Or it just makes me want to work harder. And so, the more feedback, I'm open to it. I'm receptive. I want you to know I hear you, and let's just have another successful year and step it up even more. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So with that, Mr. Prestos, have we concluded what we need to conclude for this meeting?
We have one final slide just to acquaint you with our next steps.
Okay.
If April can share her screen. So this is a summary of what to anticipate on June 9th, in addition to, so we have the work plan on there, but we are intending to produce and publish on June 2nd, that's a week in advance of this meeting, a publication of a line item draft FY21 budget. That will not include all of the labor solutions at that time. That's going to be a evolving conversation, but it will provide the council with a full comprehensive overview of our budget, our draft budget. We'll review our CIP projects, talk to you a little bit more about those user fees that you heard about today, schedule a discussion on our work plan. And then on June 23rd, that's the date we intend to bring you back the additional modeling for the long-range financial forecast and the date we're scheduling for FY21 budget adoption. And we're happy to answer any final questions that you have.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
I am a little concerned that we had earlier public comment, but we have not allowed actual public comment in quite some time. And I know we're running late and going into another meeting, but I do want to respect our citizens who are actually participating in this meeting.
Yeah, I think that's very appropriate. So I will take the time here and open public comment. Amalia, are we seeing anybody with a comment? Thank you, Mr. Doring.
Let's see. At this time, we don't have any public comment. I want to give it just a moment. Okay, we do have public comment here. Just one moment.
Thank you.
Mr. Demchuk, go ahead.
He's muted.
Oh, Mr. Demchuk, can you take off the mute?
There we go. Hi. Sorry about that. This is Matt Demchuk, Chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, and just wanted to comment on the decision to cancel the fireworks. This was brought up at our last Parks and Rec Commission meeting, and the census of the commission was not to cancel, but totally understand the reasoning. However, the part of the decision was based on a $40,000 budget reduction to the Parks and Recreation budget. And there was discussion today about moving some of that money to pay for other endeavors, the grants, specifically the Cameo and the drive-in. So I just kind of wanted to give you, the council, kind of the position that the Parks and Rec Commission had on this. This is something the fireworks, almost died about 3 or 4 years ago. And with the work of a couple of the commissioners back then, we revived it through private donations. And, we'd hate to see this go away. We did get reassurance from the city manager that this was really just more of a safety issue than a budget issue. So I just want to make sure that this isn't setting a precedent for future fireworks shows. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment and voicing in on that. It's appreciated. Is there any additional public comment?
Just one moment. I do not see any other additional comment at this time.
Very good. Thank you. So with that, I believe we've concluded everything for this meeting, unless there's something that somebody is seeing that they would like to add, Mr. Knudsen.
Yeah, briefly to follow up on Mr. Demchuk's comment and the communication with the Parks and Rec board as well as the staff. I'm hoping that there will be some funds available to do some local type events, whether it's a kids sparkler parade or whatnot. That there may be some way to celebrate 4th of July from the city's perspective, and that may require $1,000 or a couple $1,000s, and I hope the council is open to that, because it would continue our July 4th celebration. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm open to that.
And I think as we look at what the work with the Cameo, that will materialize, and so we'll be able to see how we can participate. So thank you for that. Any additional comment before I close the meeting and we see you again in the next meeting? Seeing none. Okay, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. It's most appreciated, and we'll see you soon.